The story starts with Crown Prince Alfonso loudly calling out to Lady Alexandra, shouting that he has run out of patience for her repeated wrongdoings. He formally announces that he is breaking off their engagement. Alexandra stands silently in the spotlight of the ballroom while the guests look on. She recognizes the man as her fiancé, Lord Alfonso, the first prince of the Kingdom of Tarraconensis. She notes that she is currently standing in the middle of her own public condemnation event. Lucia, a baron's daughter whom Alexandra refers to as Potato Girl, begs Alexandra to admit to her crime so that Lord Alfonso will forgive her. Alexandra remains silent, observing that the crown prince is infatuated with a potato girl instead of her. She notices the surrounding crowd and recognizes that everyone present is an ally to the prince and Lucia. At this point it becomes clear she has no one on her side, so subscribe if you want to see how she turns this around. Alexandra realizes that she seems to have no way out of the current situation. She looks up with a slight smile, considering the possibility that she may actually have a way out after all. Alexandra realizes that she came prepared and tells them to enjoy their remaining time while they still can. She reflects that the entire situation began exactly one day earlier. Alexandra clarifies that one day ago was when everything fell apart, pondering the accusations of wrongdoing made against her. She questions the exact meaning behind the claims made about her actions. The timeline shifts back to 24 hours before the event, showing the outside of a large estate. Alexandra receives bad news inside her quarters. She sits at a table and realizes that her life is about to end. Alexandra notes that she has 24 hours before facing a cancelled engagement and public condemnation, wondering what she should do because she is completely doomed. She experiences a spinning head and nausea, concluding that this is the worst possible situation. Alexandra decides that she needs to calm down and think through her situation clearly. She reviews her background, noting that she is the daughter of one of the 3 great dukes in the Kingdom of Tarraconensis. Alexandra reminds herself that the Kingdom of Tarraconensis sits on a peninsula and that her own family has a very long history within the realm. She then reflects on her engagement to Crown Prince Alfonso, which required her to undergo rigorous training from a young age to prepare for her role as an empress. Alexandra remembers how she only ever envisioned a future alongside Alfonso, believing she would spend her life as his empress. She recognizes that her expected path has suddenly changed. Alexandra sits alone and accepts the fact that Alfonso is now entirely infatuated with the other girl. She recalls that her feelings for the prince were not natural but cultivated, as she felt nothing special during their first meeting. Alexandra notes that she gradually forced herself to like Alfonso because she wanted to avoid a miserable marriage based solely on duty. She explains that because of her choices, she eventually grew to love Alfonso genuinely from her heart. Alexandra adds that she even began to hope Alfonso would return her love. She recalls a statement accusing her of only seeing Lord Alfonso as the crown prince. Alexandra remembers a past moment when she encountered Lucia in a palace hallway. She reflects on the specific words that Lucia directed toward her during that previous encounter. Alexandra states that Lucia's comment made her incredibly angry. She insists that she truly loves Alfonso as a man, noting that Lucia's words completely dismissed her lifelong efforts, her way of life, and her feelings. Alexandra reveals that she knew Alfonso favored Lucia for a long time, even though Alexandra was his actual fiancée. She clenches her fist, concluding that she simply could not tolerate the situation any longer. Alexandra notes that her jealousy turned to malice. Other noble girls mocked Lucia for being the daughter of a baron, warning each other that her poverty would rub off on them if they got too close. She explains that she directed all of her malice toward the potato girl. Nearby girls made comments about Lucia's uniform being completely torn up and dirty. Alexandra looks out a window and states that she never hired anyone to physically attack Lucia. She admits to indirectly encouraging others to do her bidding so she would not be directly involved. She places her hand on the window glass and realizes it was a harmful cycle. The more she acted against Lucia, the more Lucia's simple nature stood out, drawing the prince closer to her. Alexandra reflects on how the situation escalated to the point where Lord Alfonso became openly hostile toward her. She mentions hearing rumors that Alfonso and Lucia had already confessed their love for each other, noting that the prince's dislike for her only grew stronger. Alexandra looks ahead to the upcoming social gathering at the academy, concluding that Alfonso plans to use her wrongdoings as a reason to remove her and choose Lucia instead. She slams her hands onto the table, stating that she refuses to accept this outcome from the potato girl. Alexandra sits alone at her desk, declaring her intention to completely destroy the other woman. She notes that those angry thoughts were exactly what she was fixated on as she approached her chair. Alexandra explains that as soon as she sat down, she suddenly felt a severe dizziness, and memories belonging to an unfamiliar person began flowing into her mind. She realizes those memories belonged to her past life as an ordinary office worker in her second year of adulthood. She remembers being an unattractive and plain person who never had a boyfriend, had a slender build, and spent her time reading light novels, manga, and playing games. Alexandra states that she does not know the reason why she suddenly recalled these memories from her previous life. She shifts her focus to what is truly important, which is her current identity. Alexandra recognizes that her current self is identical to a character from a game called Dokiden, where she is cast as the love rival and main villainess. She also notes that her physical appearance matches that character perfectly. She struggles with severe dizziness as she comes to the certain realization that she is living inside the actual world of that game. Alexandra acknowledges that she is starting to feel sick again and tells herself to get a firm grip on the situation. She realizes that Dokiden is a standard romance game about a commoner heroine, represented by the potato girl, who is adopted by a poor baron and enters a school for nobles to form relationships with the men she meets. Alexandra realizes that she is the exact person who blocks the main character in every single story path of the game. She notes that she gets ruined in most of those paths, criticizing the choice of the writers. She then tries to figure out which specific storyline the potato girl is following right now. Alexandra looks at the large group of men already won over by the potato girl, including the crown prince, the king, and the butler, realizing that this situation leads straight to the reverse ending. She becomes enraged, wondering why the potato girl is pursuing so many different interests at once. Alexandra reflects that in this particular conclusion, the heroine successfully becomes the crown princess while keeping all the other male targets deeply infatuated with her. She collapses onto her desk feeling physically sick, directed entirely at the actions of the potato girl. Alexandra recognizes that while she is normally destined to be publicly ruined at the feast the next day, the reverse harem storyline functions differently. She details how this specific path avoids a public condemnation entirely because the potato girl forgives her, forcing the two of them to settle their differences and remain friends forever. Alexandra reacts with intense anger, declaring that such a peaceful resolution is a total humiliation that she will never tolerate. She decides that she would rather die or face terrible punishments than ever make up with that woman. Alexandra declares that she is someone who worked to become the leader of the nation and will keep her pride throughout the ordeal. She states that she will never beg for mercy from the potato girl. Alexandra stops shouting and begins to quietly review her actual options. She considers how to change a losing situation, deciding that she must move her pieces strategically to make the other girl make a mistake. Alexandra remembers that the reverse ending is the hardest outcome to reach in the game and cannot happen through normal choices. She concludes that the potato girl is also a reincarnated person who has been secretly laughing while watching her follow the scripted villain path. Alexandra reasons that the potato girl likely has her guard down because her happy ending seems completely guaranteed at this stage. Suddenly, she smiles, noting that she is unfortunately no longer a simple computer program following a script. Alexandra stands by the window and notes that she still has time to make her moves. She observes that the condemnation event takes place tomorrow night. Alexandra states that the event is exactly 24 hours away, resolving to turn the situation around completely. She decides on her first step and rings a small hand bell. A maid steps into the room and responds to the sound of the bell. Alexandra's personal attendant, Zenith, approaches and asks if her mistress called for her. She confirms that she did, explaining that she has a specific task to entrust to Zenith. Zenith agrees immediately, stating that she will follow the orders of her mistress. Alexandra instructs Zenith to go and immediately investigate a butler named Harold, causing the attendant to look surprised. Zenith seeks clarification about the butler named Harold, and Alexandra confirms that the name is correct. Alexandra asks if Zenith is unable to complete the request, and after a moment of silence, Zenith answers that she is capable. Zenith bows respectfully and tells Alexandra to leave the investigation completely to her. With 23 hours remaining until the event, a collection of books and tied papers sits on a desk. Zenaida confirms that these items were discovered inside his room. Zenaida speaks directly to her mistress, stating that the findings match exactly what Alexandra suspected from the beginning. Alexandra remains seated and notes that the outcome is just as she expected. She commends Zenaida for her good work while the attendant bows respectfully. Alexandra reflects that Harold is a target for the other girl and intends to betray her at the upcoming event by revealing her misdeeds. She notes that he would need proof to achieve this, which is why she ordered Zenaida to search his quarters while he was away. She looks at a massive stack of journals detailing numerous wrongdoings. She expresses disbelief that he chose to preserve such a large amount of evidence. Alexandra realizes that this evidence will give her the leverage she needs to act against him, and she calls out to Zenaida to deliver her next command. She commands Zenaida to go and summon Harold. After Zenaida complies, Alexandra adds that she must also call for a few of the other household servants. Zenaida asks for clarification regarding whether the other servants should be included. Alexandra requests that her attendant deliver a specific message to them, and Zenaida agrees to do so. Alexandra smiles and instructs Zenaida to deliver the exact message that there is a traitor within their household. A knock sounds at the door as the chapter starts. Harold enters the room and apologizes for keeping his mistress waiting, stating that he came because she called for him. Alexandra tells Harold to come closer, and Zenaida takes her leave to exit the room. Harold stands before the desk and asks how he can be of service. Alexandra remains completely silent. Alexandra observes Harold making a harmless face while he is actively trying to double-cross her. Harold shows confusion as Alexandra calls out his name. She states directly that Harold is fired and commands him to leave the house immediately. Harold wonders to himself why this is happening so suddenly. He asks his mistress if he has done something that did not meet her satisfaction. Alexandra sighs and states that she is fully aware that he likes the potato girl. Harold reacts with sudden shock. Alexandra clarifies that whoever he likes is not the issue, but prioritizing that girl over his master is a completely different story. Harold is startled by the mention of prioritization and states that he simply considers Lucia to be a lovely woman. Alexandra responds with an expression of mild amusement. Alexandra points out that Harold is already on a first-name basis with the girl. She describes Lucia as a woman who makes advances toward the crown prince as well as numerous other men, concluding that she has no idea what part of that behavior Harold finds lovely. Harold reacts with total speechlessness. Harold swallows hard objects, stating that describing the situation in that way makes it seem as though Lucia is seducing and deceiving men. He requests that his mistress retract the statement. Alexandra wonders if Harold is trying to give her commands now as she rings her handbell. The doors suddenly burst open and several household servants enter the room, causing Harold to look back in surprise. The servants grab Harold and strike the back of his leg to force him down. Harold reacts with shock and demands to know what they are doing. Harold collapses to the floor under their grip and asks Alexandra to stop calling him by that name. He looks up in frustration as footsteps approach, demanding to know what his mistress is doing. Alexandra looks down at him and states that he is no longer a servant of the house. Alexandra calls out to Zenaida, who answers as she enters the room. Harold turns around in confusion, but his face fills with shock when he sees Zenaida holding the stack of documents. One of the servants opens a journal to read it, prompting Harold to scream at Zenaida to stop. The journal entry describes a secret late-night meeting with the leader of an underground organization on a specific date. It records that multiple gemstones were traded for a contract to stage an attack on Lucia. Zenaida continues reading from the journal, stating a specific date and time for a tea party with multiple classmates. She reads that Harold spoke of rumors concerning Lucia as if they were factual to isolate her further. Harold looks down with a strained expression. Zenaida adds that Harold also kept records of all of his mistress's movements and behaviors. Harold reacts with silent panic. Alexandra looks down at the journal and states that it is unfortunate for Harold to dishonor her and the entire household in this manner. She leans forward over her desk and demands to know if Harold has an explanation for what he did. Harold grits his teeth in silence. Harold speaks up loudly, stating that he does have an explanation and argues that Alexandra's actions against Lucia were unjust in the first place. Alexandra cuts him off, stating that her ears hurt every time she hears Lucia's name, and orders the servants to shut him up. A servant pulls a cloth over Harold's mouth, muffling his voice as he tries to speak. Alexandra notes that she just remembered something while Harold makes muffled noises from the floor. She says that because Harold served under her in some capacity, she is throwing an object at him, which flies through the air and hits him in the head. Alexandra explains that Harold can keep the item as his severance pay. The object pops open on the floor to reveal valuables, leaving Zenaida and the other servants surprised. The open box reveals a highly valuable necklace adorned with a large gemstone. A servant looks at the jewelry and speaks to her mistress, stating that she recognizes the item. A memory shows Prince Alfonso presenting the jewelry box to Alexandra, stating that the gift was chosen specifically to suit the future empress. Alfonso added that he selected the piece himself, and Alexandra accepted the gesture, stating that it was fine. Returning to the present, Alexandra smiles and states that she has no need for the necklace anymore. Alexandra closes the box, noting that if it is sold in the correct place, the money will allow him to live for the rest of his life without working. She shoves the box against Harold's gagged face, stating that he should thank her in tears. Harold looks up at her in silence. Alexandra delivers a final farewell to Harold, commanding him never to show his face to her again. The servants drag Harold out of the room through the double doors while he mutters that this cannot be happening. The doors close completely. Alexandra expresses satisfaction that the first person has been successfully handled, bidding him goodbye forever while Zenaida stands nearby. Alexandra reflects on how difficult it is to manage everything on her own as someone who is accustomed to simply giving orders. She decides it is time to move on to the next matter. Zenaida speaks to her mistress, stating that she was surprised to discover Harold was secretly conspiring against her. Alexandra remarks that love is blind, stating that Harold likely became a fool because of the potato girl. She then shifts her focus to the next person. She points directly towards Zenaida, indicating that her attendant is the next individual to be addressed. Alexandra recalls that during the condemnation event scheduled for the next day, Zenaida is destined to abandon her quickly. She decides that she will buy out Zenaida before that abandonment can take place. Alexandra addresses Zenaida to present a proposal, and Zenaida responds by asking what that proposal involves. She looks back over her shoulder and asks Zenaida if she wants to serve directly under her rather than working for the household. Zenaida asks for clarification on whether this means she will serve only her mistress. Alexandra confirms the arrangement and states that she will provide the payment for it, leaving Zenaida in silence. Alexandra observes Zenaida and notes that her expression looks like someone who is trying to determine if she is planning something. She reflects that this reaction is understandable given how she has behaved up until this point. She decides to take immediate action. She places a jewelry box on the table and opens it up. Alexandra presents the collection of jewelry inside the box and offers it to Zenaida as a down payment for her exclusive service. Zenaida stands completely speechless at the sight of the valuables. Alexandra clarifies that she is not offering the entire collection at once. Zenaida requests permission to ask a single question. When Alexandra tells her to proceed, Zenaida states that she wants to know the reason why she was chosen. Alexandra explains that since Zenaida currently serves the entire household, she would naturally follow suit if Alexandra's father decided to cut her off. When Zenaida attempts to clarify her current loyalty, Alexandra flatly rejects the point. Zenaida smiles and states that since her mistress is so determined to secure her loyalty, it is difficult to refuse the offer. She requests to select 4 specific items from the box. Alexandra is surprised by the lack of hesitation and tells her to go ahead and choose as she pleases. Zenaida expresses her appreciation for the permission. Zenaida states that she looks forward to their future work together and requests that her overtime hours be paid as well. Alexandra watches her and questions whether she made the right decision, noting that the attendant is far more cunning than she originally anticipated. Alexandra clears her throat to change the subject, stating that she needs something from Zenaida right away. Zenaida expresses confusion. She points forward and apologizes, stating that she will not allow Zenaida to sleep tonight. Zenaida pulls back in surprise and wonders what her mistress means. Alexandra becomes annoyed and demands to know what Zenaida is imagining, clarifying that she does not have interests of that nature. Alexandra explains that many tasks must be completed before tomorrow, and she expects Zenaida to travel to multiple locations to carry them out without any complaints. She slams her hand down on the table, stating that she will now deliver the instructions. She tells Zenaida to either memorize the details or write them down so they are remembered. Zenaida immediately begins writing down the commands in her notebook as she listens to the instructions. She looks up with concern and asks her mistress if she truly intends to execute this entire plan. Alexandra confirms her intention and specifies that the plan must remain a complete secret from her father, adding that she will explain everything when the proper time arrives. Zenaida agrees to comply at once. Alexandra tells Zenaida to depart and orders her to summon Isidro first. Zenaida signals her understanding and exits the room, leaving Alexandra alone as the final moments of preparation begin. She resolves that she must begin making her own preparations as well while the window shuts firmly with a clear sound. Outside the estate under the night sky, a man observes that the summons are sudden as usual while he adjusts the rings on his fingers. The wealthy merchant Isidro greets Lady Alexandra and states that she looks beautiful as always. Alexandra dismisses the praise and asks if he heard about her request from Zenaida, and Isidro confirms that he did. Isidro asks if the details provided by the attendant are true. Alexandra relaxes on the couch and states that the information is correct without a doubt. Alexandra gestures to the room filled with various dresses and trunks, asking the merchant to take every single item away. She finishes her command by asking him to exchange all of the luxury goods for cash. The third chapter begins with a focus on the upcoming dissolution of the engagement. Isidro chuckles while looking over the luggage, noting that the collection includes items he originally supplied to her. He looks toward his client and asks if something about his past services failed to meet her expectations. Alexandra answers that she has been fully satisfied with his previous work and tells him to rest assured because her current necessities remain kept away. Alexandra gestures toward an empty chair and tells him to sit so she can explain her needs quickly, causing Isidro to gasp in surprise. Isidro smiles as he prepares to take a seat, stating that she normally makes him stand and wondering about the reason for the change. Alexandra shows her irritation and thinks that he speaks far too much, commanding him to simply sit down. Isidro looks at the massive pile of boxes and comments on the large quantity of goods. She asks if he still buys back second-hand clothing, and Alexandra confirms that they do. Alexandra asks what purpose he could possibly find for custom-tailored dresses. Isidro explains that a demand exists for these luxury items among the less wealthy nobility, adding that there are further reasons as he taps his rings. Isidro explains that some buyers are eager to purchase the used personal belongings of a duke's daughter. Alexandra states that his words mean her items will fall into the hands of people who have strange hobbies. Isidro states that if it displeases her then he will arrange for that not to happen. Alexandra tells Isidro that she does not care what happens to the items and that he can do as he pleases since she has handed them over to him. He laughs and thanks her for her generosity while Alexandra reflects that this major merchant is heavily connected to the criminal underground. She considers how Isidro handles illegal trades, spies, and violent acts for the right price, recalling that she used his services to hire the thug who targeted Lucia. Alexandra notes that several of her planned moves for the following day require Isidro's assistance, which is why she must raise immediate cash by selling her belongings. She declares that her ultimate goal is to crush all of the men who support Lucia and plan to condemn her. Isidro asks if he can begin evaluating the goods, and Alexandra tells him to use workers who will keep the matter entirely secret. Isidro agrees and claps his hands to call his assistants into the room to start inspecting the clothing and valuables. Alexandra states that she has a few requests to make using the money from the sale. Isidro replies that he already learned the main details from her maid. Alexandra states that she is glad their discussion will be fast. She requests that Isidro secretly monitor Lucia's bedroom tonight, causing Isidro to acknowledge the order. Isidro points out that Lucia is the person Alexandra dislikes, and Alexandra commands him to remain silent or face her punch. She states that she wants a complete record of everything that happens in that room until dawn. Isidro states that her request to check the bedroom reveals the nature of the event, and Alexandra confirms his statement. Alexandra reflects that the game script contains a private meeting between the Crown Prince and Lucia on the night before the condemnation. She states that she does not care about the specific details of their meeting, internally calling it unpleasant, as she shifts her focus to her true goal. Alexandra notes that she requires absolute proof that the prince committed infidelity while they were still engaged. She adds that they might also catch Lucia secretly interacting with another individual if they are lucky. Isidro smiles and states that because the workers will receive high pay to watch the room, he will have plenty of volunteers for the job. He asks when she wants to receive the update, and Alexandra states that she needs the report as soon as day breaks. Isidro observes that she clearly has her own reasons for the tight schedule and accepts the morning deadline. He asks if she has any other demands, and Alexandra introduces her next plan regarding the son of the general, which Isidro notes must be completed before tomorrow morning. Alexandra continues to explain the specific details of her remaining plans to Isidro inside the room. She reflects that her list of requests is finally finished, and Isidro signals his complete agreement. Isidro states that he will subtract the payment for all of these operations from the total value of her appraised goods. Alexandra smiles and confirms that they have successfully reached an agreement. She states that she expects good results from Isidro this time as well, and Isidro replies that she can leave the tasks entirely to him while welcoming her continued business. Isidro chuckles quietly while Alexandra sits back on the couch, feeling satisfied with the development. Zenith stands near the doorway after watching the entire meeting in secret, internally noting that the merchant is a complete scoundrel. Alexandra sighs as she observes her room, stating that all of her luxury items have been successfully cleared out. She reflects that her day has been highly chaotic so far and notes that it is almost time for her to be summoned downstairs for supper. Alexandra explains that her family gathers for supper every night because it is the only time their busy father can show his face, adding that their mother handles the primary education of the children. She notes that her older brother Cecilio has grown to excel because of their mother's training and will likely take over as the head of the family in a few years. Alexandra lists her younger siblings as the twins Viviana and Placido, and the youngest sister Esmeralda, clarifying that Placido is already engaged and Esmeralda is still being educated. She reflects that her sister Viviana is the actual problem. Alexandra notes that Viviana is classmates with Lucia and that the two of them have become close friends. Alexandra observes that it was natural for Viviana to support the relationship between Lucia and Prince Alfonso. She considers that because her relationship with Viviana was already poor, it was completely expected for her sister to turn against her. Alexandra states that she does not care if Viviana hates her, but notes that a specific issue remains. She recognizes that Viviana is also one of the individuals who plans to publicly denounce her tomorrow. Alexandra states that she is angry with Viviana despite her being her sister. She determines that she cannot allow her sister to act out of line during the upcoming event. Alexandra considers how to prevent that outcome just as a sudden knock sounds at her door. Zenaida enters the room and announces that supper is ready. Alexandra states that she will attend immediately, internally noting that she has only one course of action left. Alexandra walks down the corridor, resolving to make Viviana regret turning against her. In the dining room, Esmeralda expresses her gratitude to her mother and father for their efforts during the day. The father accepts the praise and mentions that his work was easier because Cecilio helped him. Cecilio points out that his performance still does not match his father's capabilities. The mother tells Cecilio that he is doing an excellent job. The parents note that with Placido's engagement discussions settled, the family has many positive events to expect in the future. Alexandra and Viviana eat their meal in absolute silence while sitting across from each other. An uncomfortable silence fills the entire dining room as the family continues to eat. The father clears his throat and addresses Viviana, asking her about her activities for the day. Viviana replies that she had tea with her friends after school, prompting her father to state that it is good to stay close with school companions. Viviana agrees, while Alexandra reflects on the phrase school friends to herself. Viviana locks her gaze onto her sister, causing Alexandra to look back directly in response. She looks away with a scoff, which causes Alexandra to react with immediate irritation. Alexandra internally remarks that they will soon see how long her sister can maintain that specific behavior. Alexandra places her utensils down with a clink and announces to her family that she has a matter she wants to discuss despite being in the middle of their meal. Viviana turns her head toward her sister with a confused expression. The father looks at Alexandra and notes the unusually formal nature of her sudden announcement. Alexandra hesitates for a brief moment before beginning her statement. She formally announces to her family that she wishes to withdraw from her engagement with the Crown Prince. Her announcement shocks every family member at the table, causing Viviana to drop her food in surprise while Alexandra grips her hands tightly under the table and notes that she has successfully delivered the statement. The father calls out her name and asks if this choice is a sudden whim, but Alexandra clarifies that it is not. She explains that she has been thinking about this choice for a long time because she frequently doubts if she can truly support the prince. The mother protests by stating that Alexandra is performing excellently, but Alexandra continues with her explanation. Alexandra points out that her parents must already realize the situation has become completely impossible to fix no matter how hard she tries. She states that they have already heard the rumors regarding her bad behavior, and her father looks down while confirming that he has indeed heard them. The father tells Alexandra that her wrongdoings are still within the limits of what he can protect and cover for her. Alexandra thanks her father and notes his kindness, but she quickly offers her apologies to him. She internally reflects that she cannot yield at this point and states that she must avoid causing her father any more trouble. Alexandra considers that if she stops now, she will be the only one to face the blame even if they are rebuked, whereas any further actions will damage the name of their household. She states to her family that for the sake of their ducal household, she will withdraw from the engagement. The father remains completely silent as he processes her words. He explains that the country's empresses are always chosen from ducal houses and states that they must consider who will replace her if she steps down. Alexandra answers that if that is the case, they do not have any reason to worry. Alexandra points out that the family still has two other daughters available. Viviana and Esmeralda react with sudden shock upon hearing her suggestion. Father acknowledges that her statement is true, but she prepares to explain her specific perspective on the matter. Alexandra points out that there is someone of a similar age who regularly attends tea parties with the prince and her other school companions to intentionally deepen their relationship. She directly recommends Viviana as her replacement, causing Viviana to react with immediate sweat and distress. Viviana slams her hands onto the table and objects to the statement, but her father quickly cuts her off, explaining that this is a critical matter for the household and telling her to remain silent. Alexandra looks on with a small smirk while Viviana stands across from her, shaking with anger. The father asks Alexandra if she is entirely serious about her proposal, and Alexandra states that she is. The father announces that he will allow the arrangement, and when the mother speaks up in surprise, the father states that it is perfectly fine. The father adds that he has also noticed the crown prince's affection is no longer with Alexandra and has instead shifted entirely away from her. He concludes that if they let things continue on the current path, no good results will ever come from the arrangement. The father looks directly at Alexandra and states that she has experienced a very difficult time. Alexandra states that she is actually the one who should feel truly sorry. The father states that he will inform the king about the matter soon because the king will certainly understand the situation, while Viviana reacts with visible panic in her seat. Alexandra states that there is no need for her father to intervene because she plans to request a royal audience the next day to directly ask for the withdrawal of the engagement, and her father agrees to leave the matter to her. Alexandra calls out Viviana by name, causing her sister to flinch in surprise. She smiles gracefully at her sister while Viviana looks back with confusion, wondering what her sister intends to say. Alexandra gives a sharp glare and states that although she was unable to remain by the crown prince's side, she knows Viviana will become an excellent source of support for him. She instructs Viviana to treat the prince well, leaving her sister trembling from a sudden chill while Alexandra internally declares that she has won this interaction with 21 hours remaining. The fourth chapter begins with a theme of rank and pedigree. The door suddenly opens with a loud bang as a furious Viviana storms inside the room. Alexandra looks back over her shoulder calmly as her younger sister demands to know what she was thinking. Viviana stands by the double doors breathing heavily from her frantic arrival while Alexandra watches her silently from the desk. She looks at her sister and notes internally that Viviana arrived exactly as anticipated. While cleaning her writing tools at the desk, Alexandra asks what the sudden intrusion is about and states that it is quite rude to enter a room without knocking. Viviana fires back that her sister is one to talk about proper behavior. She stands angrily across the room and demands to know why Alexandra made such a sudden declaration during their meal. She continues her outburst, stating that she cannot believe for even a second that Alexandra is truly willing to give up the royal engagement. Alexandra calmly continues to clean her items and states that she already explained her reasons at the dinner table. She restates that she is simply not fit to stand by the side of the crown prince. Viviana clenches her fist and calls the statement a complete lie, asserting that there is no possible way Alexandra would abandon her position so easily. She insists that the choice makes no sense, especially after all the hostile actions Alexandra took against Lucia in the past. Alexandra reminds Viviana that she previously stated that her older sister was not suited for the royal engagement. Alexandra points out that Viviana has finally obtained what she wanted and tells her to celebrate the outcome. Viviana wonders what Alexandra is plotting, and noting that her sister is the last person she would ever believe has changed her mind. Alexandra states that regardless of what Viviana says, she is still going to break off the engagement. She shifts her gaze slightly and asks if there is another reason for her sister's reaction. Alexandra asks if Viviana is simply angry about having to take her place as the future empress, leaving Viviana completely speechless. Viviana tries to deny the statement by saying that is not the case. Alexandra explains that the royal family stays powerful through its connections to the three great ducal houses, which makes a replacement a natural requirement. She leans back slightly and states that Viviana surely understood that reality already. Alexandra states that the role is not difficult because all Viviana has to do is give birth to the royal heir. Viviana objects, stating that she cannot fulfill that duty. She repeats her sister's words and asks if Viviana wants to step down simply because she is friends with the potato girl. Viviana stays silent while Alexandra narrows her eyes and addresses her directly. Alexandra asks Viviana if she has any understanding of what her words actually imply. She states that Viviana is not satisfied with removing her from the position and now wants to abandon the family duty entirely, which would force the royal family to blend with common blood. Viviana reacts with sudden shock. Viviana tries to argue that she did not mean it that way, but her voice is cut off as Alexandra slams her fist down on the desk with a loud thud. She shouts back that Viviana's statement means exactly that. Viviana flinches in silence from her older sister's sudden outburst. Alexandra sighs and relaxes her posture, noting that she hit the desk unintentionally. She adds that it is fine and states that if Viviana hates the arrangement so much, she will simply ask the women from the other noble houses to take the position instead, leaving Viviana completely stunned. Viviana panics and loudly objects, stating that she wants anything except that outcome. Alexandra looks at her sister and tells her to clean up after her own mess instead. She explains that it has been a long time since their household last produced a queen consort and reminds Viviana that she understands the high importance of that legacy. Alexandra reflects internally that her personal love for the prince was not the only reason she remained attached to the engagement. A memory shows a younger Alexandra who recalls how she carried the weight of the future reputation of their ducal house on her shoulders from a very young age. The internal reflection continues as Alexandra notes she was never allowed to fail, which is why she worked hard and endured for so long, before she suddenly stands up from her desk with a clatter and steps forward to point directly at her sister. Alexandra towers over Viviana and firmly tells her to listen, stating that as daughters of the ducal house and with Alfonso as the crown prince, this duty is their unchangeable fate. She adds that Viviana's personal feelings are completely irrelevant in this matter, leaving Viviana to look down in silent hesitation. Viviana tries to find an alternative and suggests that they could simply have one of the dukes adopt Lucia to fix the situation. Alexandra sighs and clarifies that the entire arrangement relies strictly on pedigree and not just noble rank. She cries out and asks if Alexandra expects her to simply ignore the mutual affection between the crown prince and Lucia. Alexandra states that their personal feelings are completely irrelevant to the matter and notes that they are free to spend the rest of their lives together for all she cares, causing Viviana to stutter in confusion. She instructs her sister to focus on the larger consequences and consider the status of a future child born from a union between Alfonso and Lucia. Alexandra details the situation further by asking if Viviana truly expects the great ducal houses and the rest of high society to recognize a child of that heritage as the legitimate next monarch. She maintains her quiet gaze while a sweating Viviana stands completely stunned, internally reflecting on how she failed to realize this harsh political reality until now. Alexandra explains that the crown prince is only one of 3 royal brothers and clarifies that if either of the younger siblings secures a child with a ducal house, the right to the throne will go straight to that branch instead. Viviana looks down and wonders what will happen next, which prompts Alexandra to look back with a confident smile and offer a new solution. Alexandra raises a finger and proposes that Alfonso could choose to give up his title as the crown prince entirely to live as a standard noble. Viviana reacts with sudden shock as Alexandra concludes that if the prince chooses to renounce the throne, no one in the kingdom will object to his marriage to Lucia. Alexandra points out that since the prince and Lucia love each other, social status should not matter. She then asks Viviana what is wrong. Viviana grips her dress tightly in silence. Alexandra observes her sister's quiet response and notes internally that Viviana has finally realized the reality of the situation. Alexandra reflects internally on Lucia's greed, describing her as someone who pursues multiple men for power. She considers that Lucia does not have enough genuine love to stay with Alfonso if he loses his title as crown prince. She concludes her thoughts by noting that Lucia only desires the title of the crown prince. Alexandra expresses irritation, thinking that others are hypocrites for claiming she only views the prince for his royal title. Zenaida knocks and enters the room to announce that the departure preparations are ready. Alexandra thanks the maid and states that she is leaving immediately. While Zenaida helps her put on a cloak, Alexandra asks if the letter requesting a royal audience was received. The maid confirms that the letter will be delivered to the king, and Alexandra approves. Viviana stands silently with her back turned while Alexandra looks toward her before leaving. Alexandra calls out her sister's name, causing Viviana to flinch. Alexandra tells her to use this time to think very carefully about her own position. The doors close with a sharp clack, leaving Viviana standing completely alone in the room in absolute silence. Outside the estate, the night sky hangs quietly over the empty city streets. A horse-drawn carriage travels toward another large estate under the crescent moon with exactly 20 hours remaining before the scheduled event. Fresh tea is poured into a fine cup as a host expresses genuine surprise at the unannounced arrival. The host is revealed to be the ducal daughter Carolina, who sits gracefully on her couch and notes that she did not expect a visitor at such a late hour. Alexandra expresses her gratitude to Carolina for hosting her so late at night. Carolina replies that she does not mind at all since she heard the situation was an urgent matter. Carolina points out that it must be cold outside and invites her guest to have a warm cup of tea, prompting Alexandra to thank her as Carolina dismisses her attendants to wait outside. Alexandra reflects internally that Carolina is the same age as her and counts as one of her close friends, noting that in the original game script, Carolina remained a neutral character who occasionally assisted both the heroine and the villain. Alexandra continues her internal thoughts, recalling that although Carolina did not appear frequently in the game, her status as a duke's daughter gave her major influence among the students at the academy. She sips her tea while considering that gaining Carolina's support will significantly increase her chances of success during the meeting tomorrow. Carolina then addresses her directly to ask about the true purpose of her sudden late-night visit. Carolina chuckles and asks if Alexandra has finally come to hand over the royal engagement to her instead. Alexandra answers that it is at least one of the options she is currently considering, which causes Carolina to look up with sudden surprise. Carolina asks for clarification on whether her friend is truly being serious about the matter. Alexandra looks down at her cup and explains that she had to think over the decision a lot, but she came tonight to state clearly that she has resolved to step down from the engagement. She asks if Alexandra is choosing to let that vixen have the crown prince. Alexandra clarifies that this is not the case, explaining that she has simply run out of patience for the prince. Carolina closes her eyes and lets out a sigh, remarking that the choice still makes a significant difference. She notes that the entire situation has deteriorated to such an extreme extent that even Alexandra is actively choosing to withdraw from the arrangement. Alexandra places her teacup down, stating her belief that the prince intends to pressure her into retiring during the meeting tomorrow anyway, using her past actions against Lucia as his primary excuse. Carolina notes that such an outcome is entirely possible. She remarks that even the once wise crown prince has become a complete prisoner to that vixen, adding that the prince might no longer understand the high importance of a royal ducal engagement, which Alexandra confirms. Alexandra focuses her gaze directly ahead and states that because of this situation, she has a specific request for Carolina. Carolina asks to know what that request involves. She references the upcoming event where the others plan to publicly declare how evil she is, asking Carolina to help defend her during that moment. Carolina asks if this means Alexandra wants her to cover for her actions. Alexandra clarifies that she is actually worried about being falsely accused of things she has never done. She notes internally that the sequence matches the original game events exactly, explaining aloud that the potato girl has already blamed her privately in front of the crown prince for the actions of other people. Carolina continues her thought, stating honestly that the girl is highly unusual because she causes all the gentlemen at court to fall for her one after another. She notes that in complete contrast to her cute looks, the girl possesses a terrifying level of perception and foresight, allowing her to win over all the gentlemen with absolute ease. Carolina adds that it is entirely natural for all the young noble ladies to dislike her for that behavior. She expresses her deep confusion regarding what kind of person the girl truly is. Alexandra breaks the silence by asking Carolina if she knows the actual origin of the term vixen. Carolina reacts with surprise and admits that she has never thought about it too deeply. Alexandra explains that the expression comes from a historical event in a country in the Far East during the height of its prosperity, where a fox demon transformed into a beautiful woman to deceive the emperor with constant pleasures, causing the leader to lose his focus and the country to begin its decline. She concludes that the nation ultimately collapsed because of the deception. She then slides a paper across the table and states that she will leave the item with Carolina. Carolina looks down at the folder on the table and asks what the document contains. Alexandra invites her companion to look over the material directly. Carolina remains silent as she flips the page open to inspect the contents. Carolina opens her eyes wide in complete shock as she scans the text on the page. Alexandra calmly calls out to her to keep her focus on the matter. She looks forward with a serious expression and states that the actions of that woman match the nature of a vixen perfectly, concluding that she may indeed be destroying the entire country. Carolina remains silent for a quiet moment while processing the information before addressing her companion by name. Carolina adopts a determined expression and asks to serve as Alexandra's ally, asserting that the vixen cannot be allowed to act as she pleases any further. Alexandra responds with a confident smile, expressing her gratitude to Carolina and stating that she is now in her debt. The fifth chapter begins with a focus on the relaxation of the ladies as Alexandra sits alone in her room and braids her hair. With 19 hours remaining before the scheduled event, Alexandra returns home under the crescent moon and collapses onto her bed with a long sigh. Lying flat on her back, Alexandra notes her absolute exhaustion and reflects that she has successfully completed everything she needed to do for the day. She raises her hand and considers her schedule for the next morning, stating to herself that she must meet with the king first thing to ask for the dissolution of the engagement. Alexandra looks forward in silence as she mentally repeats her formal statement requesting to withdraw from her engagement with the crown prince. She suddenly sits up on the bed and considers that the phrase sounds much sadder than she expected. Alexandra lets out a quiet sigh and determines that the current situation cannot be helped. She walks toward the large curtains and reflects that up until half a day ago she was someone who truly loved the prince, before she flips the fabric aside. Looking through the window at the night sky and the moon, Alexandra wonders where exactly things went wrong between herself and the prince. Alexandra considers if the issue was the fact that she lost her temper or the fact that she felt jealous of the potato girl. She further reflects on whether she was simply not attractive enough for the prince. Alexandra concludes that it is likely none of those reasons because her current world is a game where her specific role is simply to be hated by the crown prince. She realizes that a future where she could be with him never existed, noting to herself that although she knew this outcome was coming, it remains an instance of unrequited love. Looking down, Alexandra reflects that the current pain in her chest is exactly the same as the pain she experienced during her past life. A sudden knock sounds at the door as Zenaida apologizes for the intrusion, prompting Alexandra to respond from the window before the maid notes her location and advises her to take a bath and rest because staying up late will affect her performance the next day. Alexandra agrees with the statement and tells her attendant that she will follow the advice immediately. Alexandra moves to the large bathhouse where steam rises from the warm water as her attendant helps her unfasten her clothing. Zenaida announces that she will take her leave for the night and instructs Alexandra to call for her if she requires any further assistance. Alexandra looks back and asks Zenaida if she is not coming into the bath as well. Zenaida reacts with surprise and declines the invitation, but Alexandra insists that she join her just for today, causing Zenaida to repeat that she would prefer not to do so. Alexandra begins tossing Zenaida's clothing away and states that it is fine to relax occasionally, ordering her to prepare quickly while Zenaida calls out to her mistress in protest. Zenaida ultimately gives in to the demand and begins scrubbing her mistress's back, which leads Alexandra to state that the massage feels excellent while Zenaida stands by in silence. Alexandra calls out to Zenaida, prompting the maid to ask what she needs. She looks to the side and asks her attendant if she thinks she is pretty. Zenaida confirms the statement immediately, telling Alexandra that her mistress is very beautiful. Alexandra agrees with the compliment and states that she is definitely attractive, leaving Zenaida to watch her in silence. Alexandra was created with an extraordinary level of beauty that anyone would envy, specifically to highlight the simplicity of the potato girl. Alexandra has the power to charm noblemen just by walking past them while possessing true refinement and education on the inside, yet her circumstances remain difficult. She remarks with a sigh that love simply does not progress smoothly, prompting Zenaida to agree completely with her mistress's statement. Alexandra asks her attendant if she has someone she is currently seeing, and Zenaida reveals that she is actually going to be engaged soon. Alexandra reacts with surprise and states that Zenaida is leaving her behind to find happiness alone, which causes Zenaida to laugh quietly while asking to be excused. Zenaida comments that her mistress could use a bit more restraint, making Alexandra think that her attendant was supposed to be on her side. Alexandra then holds out the sponge and tells Zenaida to take it. Alexandra tells her attendant to hand over the sponge and announces that she is going to wash her instead. Zenaida tries to object, but Alexandra dismisses the protest by stating that she simply feels like doing it. Zenaida looks at her mistress and notes that Alexandra seems like a completely different person today. Alexandra asks if that is truly the case, and Zenaida confirms that she is quite different from yesterday, asking if she may know what happened as someone who serves her, which causes Alexandra to freeze in place. Alexandra remains silent for a moment before declaring that she received an oracle, causing a bewildered Zenaida to repeat the word. Zenaida has water poured over her shoulders and notices Alexandra walking away toward the large pool, calling out to her mistress as Alexandra dips her foot into the water. She relaxes completely inside the warm bath and notes that the water feels wonderful, before clarifying to Zenaida that her situation is not exactly a divine oracle. Floating in the pool, Alexandra explains that she has somehow come to know every event that will happen from this moment onward, using the upcoming day as a primary example. As Zenaida listens closely, Alexandra sits in the water and states that she is fated to be rejected by the crown prince. She leans her head back and adds that her companions, her sister Viviana, and even her own parents will eventually turn against her. Looking back toward her attendant, Alexandra clarifies that this upcoming betrayal naturally includes Zenaida as well. She looks at Zenaida from the water and explains that this dark future is the exact reason she previously secured her loyalty with money. Zenaida steps into the water and reflects that while the information is sudden and difficult to believe, it is highly probable that someone employed by the ducal household would end up in that exact situation. Resting her arms on the edge of the stone bath, Alexandra states that she is currently putting all of her effort into a difficult struggle to completely erase that future. Alexandra explains that she cannot simply lie down and accept a future where everything she has done up until now would be entirely meaningless. Zenaida remains completely silent as she looks down and processes the weight of her mistress's words. Alexandra looks closely at her attendant and maintains her quiet focus. She thanks Zenaida for her hard work during the day and instructs her to prepare herself because tomorrow will be equally busy. Zenaida pauses for a brief moment before offering a gentle smile and confirming that she will certainly comply. Zenaida asks if she may be allowed to ask a question, prompting Alexandra to invite her to speak. She directly asks her mistress if it is true that she genuinely loved the crown prince. Alexandra confirms the statement, explaining that she truly loved him and was completely prepared to spend her life by his side as his partner. Zenaida asks if it is truly acceptable to give up on that relationship so easily, but Alexandra calmly answers that it is perfectly fine. Alexandra explains that she has already lost interest in the prince and certainly does not want to be the one who gets dumped. She reflects internally that while the pain in her chest is real, it was never anything like an unwavering true love in the first place. Alexandra considers whether a love that remains intact no matter what actually exists. She ponders the idea of a storybook love where a person would even abandon morality for the sake of their partner. A flashback shows a young Alexandra standing over a crying boy near a large building, demanding to know if he fell down again and calling him clumsy. She reaches out to help the boy, causing him to blush as they hold hands. The boy offers his thanks with a bright smile, leaving the young Alexandra staring at him in surprise. Back in the present, Alexandra focuses forward and reacts with sudden confusion. Alexandra silently wonders why a childhood memory about that crying person suddenly returned to her mind, before Zenaida calls out to her mistress to get her attention. Zenaida notices a change in her mistress and asks if something is wrong, prompting Alexandra to explain that she simply felt a bit dizzy. Zenaida states that the situation is bad and advises returning to the bedroom so she can fetch some water. The scene shifts back to the bedroom where Alexandra rests under the blankets while her attendant stands nearby. Zenaida holds a tray with a pitcher and glass and asks how her mistress is feeling now, allowing Alexandra to state that she has successfully regained her composure and is perfectly fine. Zenaida states that she will return to her own quarters and requests that Alexandra call for her if any further assistance is needed, to which Alexandra agrees. Lying in bed, Alexandra offers her gratitude to Zenaida. Zenaida stops and turns around with a highly surprised expression, causing Alexandra to notice the reaction and state her confusion. Zenaida explains that it is simply highly unusual for her to receive gratitude from her mistress, prompting Alexandra to realize internally that offering thanks is actually a habit carried over from her previous life. Zenaida calls out Lady's name to gain her attention once more. She offers a gentle smile and states her sincere hope that Alexandra will be blessed with a much better match next time. Alexandra asks her attendant if she is making fun of her, but Zenaida clarifies that those are her true feelings. Alexandra reflects on a past comment about her having a distinct personality that she does not dislike, concluding that she agrees with the statement. The maid tells her mistress to rest well, and Alexandra wishes her a good night before the door clicks shut and she drifts off to sleep. The scene transitions to the royal palace back entrance under the night sky, where armed guards stand watch at the gates. A hooded figure carrying a candle sneaks through the dark stone hallways of the palace, looking around carefully as he moves. A sudden voice from the shadows orders the person to stop immediately, catching the hooded man by surprise. The hooded man turns around as footsteps approach, facing the individual who just walked into the corridor. The individual is revealed to be third Prince Gerald, who demands to know exactly where his older brother is going. With exactly 18 hours remaining until the event, Gerald maintains a steady gaze while standing in the dark hallway holding a lit candle. Wearing a dark hood over his head, Alfonso demands to know what Gerald wants from him. He is on his way to the preparation meeting for the gathering scheduled for the next day. Gerald points out the late hour and requests to know the identity of the person accompanying his brother. Alfonso pauses and addresses Gerald directly. The Crown Prince suspects that his younger brother was intentionally lying in wait for him to leave the estate. Standing firm in the stone corridor beside an armored guard and a lit torch, Gerald insists that his older brother must answer his inquiry first. Alfonso scoffs and dismisses the request. He states that since Gerald does not even attend the academy, he has no reason to provide an answer. The prince bids his brother goodbye as turns to leave. The prince suddenly freezes in his tracks when Gerald states his belief that the crown prince is actually going to visit Lucia. Gerald addresses his older brother. He states that he has heard reports about Alfonso acting cold toward their future sister-in-law recently. Alfonso states that the matter has nothing to do with his brother. Gerald insists that the situation does concern him. He shouts while saying that the woman is going to become his actual sister soon and notes that even their mother treats her like her own child. Our prince looks back over his shoulder and questions whether Gerald truly expects him to marry a woman like that. Alfonso gets sick at the thought of the arrangement while Gerald listens in silence. Gerald clenches his fist and points out that Alfonso once cared for her as a fiancé. Alfonso declares that the statement is not true. He explains that he is only supposed to take that woman as his bride because of a ridiculous tradition. He states loudly that someone who harasses Lucia simply because things are not going her way has no right to be his companion. Gerald looks down as he begins to present another point. He demands to know the reason Alfonso does not just say his thoughts directly to their father. The prince smiles and assures his brother that he does not need to worry because he certainly plans to tell him. Alfonso turns back toward the corridor and points out that as members of royalty they cannot act based solely on their emotions. This restriction is the exact reason he has decided to take his current course of action. He shared his plan that tomorrow he will make public all of that woman's sins to prove that she is not fit for the engagement. Gerald listens in shock. Gerald interjects and acknowledges that his future sister-in-law has done bad things. He said that her actions only happened because Alfonso was always with Lady Lucia. Alfonso abruptly commands Gerald to shut up. He directly demands to know what his little brother understands about love. Alfonso observes his brother and remarks that he finally understands the situation. He says that the woman in question has always treated Gerald well. Alfonso believes this behavior matches her exact nature. He claims she seduced him as insurance for the time when Alfonso loses interest in her. Gerald stares back in anger. He tells Gerald to wake up and states that he is just being tricked. Gerald clenches his teeth and replies that he will keep the advice in mind. Alfonso states that as long as Gerald understands the point, he is leaving and will return by morning. The Crown Prince walks away down the corridor while Gerald grinds his teeth. Gerald swings his arm and strikes the stone wall with his fist. He told himself that the one who is truly being tricked is none other than his brother. He reflects on a time exactly 1 year ago. The guy received a specific letter. He flips the envelope over to check the sender before reading its contents. The written message states that the Crown Prince will annul his engagement with the ducal daughter Alexandra and that she will subsequently be destroyed. Gerald could not identify the sender. Standing by a window, he initially dismissed the message as a simple prank. At that time Gerald observes Alfonso and Alexandra spending time close together. He feels that the couple was very intimate at the time, leaving him with no doubts about their shared future. But he continued to receive similar letters frequently from that point forward. The subsequent letters predict that the Crown Prince will meet with Lucia before the gathering. The messages also claim that Alexandra will commit evil deeds against Lucia out of jealousy and that the Crown Prince will become completely infatuated with the baronial daughter. Walking up a large staircase past closed doors, Gerald thinks that every prediction in the letters became reality. These ongoing events caused him to fully believe the written messages. He enters a quiet room and approaches a desk. He reflects that before Lucia arrived, his future sister-in-law was both a wise and noble person. The guy opens a small case to hold one of the letters. He notes that whenever he experienced trouble in the past, Alexandra always reached out to help him. To him her past actions reveal her genuine kindness. He stands by the desk and flips the letter in his hands. He reflects that he views her as a future sister. Regardless of what Alfonso says, he still likes his sister-in-law. Gerald recalls an image of Alexandra smiling gracefully among roses. He admits to himself that he also admires her as a woman, but he had previously given up his feelings because of his older brother. The guy looks down at the letter predicting her downfall. He reasons that if the contents of the message are true, his sister-in-law will face complete ruin the very next day. Gerald grips the paper tightly in his hand. He turns sharply on his heel. He declares to himself that he will never allow that outcome to happen. The guy pushes open a large set of glass doors leading out to the balcony under the night sky. He reflects that Alexandra has always helped him and has consistently remained his ally. Gerald looks forward and considers his older brother. He decided that if Alfonso chooses to abandon his duty to protect her and becomes her enemy instead, a new plan is required. He adopts a firm expression. He declares his resolve to step in and protect her instead. The guy steps out onto the balcony under the crescent moon. He directs his thoughts toward Alexandra and tells her to wait for him. Meanwhile, inside the castle, a hand slides a handwritten letter across a table while a figure passes by the window outside. Sitting before a burning candelabra, Empress Mariania lets out a quiet sigh as her maid formally addresses her. She notes the late hour and states that staying up any longer will put the Empress's health at risk. Mariania offers her thanks and states that she will rest soon, leaving the maid standing in silence. Looking down at the desk, the maid asked about the specific contents of the letter received from Lady Alexandra, causing Mariania to stammer in confusion. Mariania addresses her maid by her name, Olivia, and asks how Alfonso has been behaving lately. When Olivia answers that she believes the prince has been growing spectacularly, the Empress states that her question meant something else entirely. She places a finger to her chin and instructs Olivia to share her true thoughts not as a palace servant, but as her original self from a Viscount household, leaving the maid speechless. Olivia shrinks back slightly and prepares to speak with all due respect, stating that the Empress has likely already heard the current gossip. She explains that high society is currently filled with rumors claiming that the Crown Prince has been completely seduced by a baronial daughter. Mariania asks if it is that girl named Lucia. Elodia states that she has also ensnared several other men of noble origin, causing Mariania to look up in shock. Mariania remarks in surprise at the ongoing rumors, while Elodia confirms that many people have already been witness to these events. The maid explains that the actions of the baronial daughter have escalated to the point where some people believe they could threaten to cause disorder within the country. Mariania places a hand to her face as she feels dizzy. She reflects that she believed she had raised her child properly, stating her realization that he has been charmed by that kind of girl of all things. Elodia stands nearby in silence. She notes that since the rumor is so well known, Alexandra likely knows about it as well. Elodia answers that she is afraid this is true. Mariania lets out a quiet sigh as she places her hand on the document. She reveals that the letter is a formal request from Alexandra to withdraw from the engagement, causing Elodia to react with sudden shock. She asks her attendant for her thoughts on the situation. Elodia hesitates before stating that Lady Alexandra should be fully aware of what her position entails. Elodia feels there is a deeper meaning behind the letter. She thinks that Alexandra choosing to ask for a withdrawal despite her high status means she believes the crown prince is genuinely going to break the established tradition. Mariania is shocked by the thought of the possibility that Alfonso plans to cancel the engagement himself. After Elodia confirms the statement, the Empress remarks on how terrifying the situation is and suddenly stands up from her desk. The Empress walks across the room and understands that this is how the situation appears to Elodia. She then steps forward and opens a wooden drawer. Mariania reaches inside a drawer and rustles through her belongings to pull out a sealed envelope. She opens the letter and reads it silently while her maid, Elodia, looks back toward her in quiet confusion. Tightening her grip on the paper, she calls out to her attendant by name. Elodia immediately answers to her lady. With a serious expression, the Empress states that she will send a reply to Alexandra right away. She declares her intention to command the young woman to come to the royal palace the very next morning. Elodia bows respectfully to confirm the order. Mariania explains that she will place a messenger on standby so the delivery can reach its destination by dawn, leaving the Empress alone to hold and read the documents. As she reads the text line by line, Mariania stares in wide-eyed shock at the warning addressed to Her Highness. The message details that her son, Crown Prince Alfonso, is planning to publicly break off his engagement with Alexandra at the upcoming gathering, forcing her to realize that the situation has truly come to this. She remains completely frozen. Looking out the window at the crescent moon, she mentally prepares herself for what lies ahead. She acknowledges to herself that tomorrow is going to be an incredibly difficult day for the kingdom. The countdown to the condemnation event reaches its final stretch with only 17 hours left before the gathering. Zenaida fastens a dark traveling cloak over her maid uniform to slip away into the night, while third Prince Gerald remains awake in solemn anticipation, entirely separate from Alexandra who continues to sleep soundly in her bed. Alexandra leans over her desk as she realizes that she is a villainess in an otome game. This realization occurred 24 hours before her scheduled condemnation event. She has already broken a few plot flags to avoid the path that leads to her destruction. 17 hours remain before the event. Alexandra looks ahead with a direct gaze and states to herself that she is only just getting started with her actions. The setting transitions to a quiet cobblestone street lined with stone buildings. A hanging sign outside a stone building marks the location of the Isidro Company. Inside, an employee stands on a decorated floor and complains about being called out at this late hour when he was previously enjoying a good drink. Isidro speaks over his shoulder to the arriving employee. He tells the worker not to react in that manner. The wealthy merchant Isidro sits behind his desk with his hands folded together. He looks forward and orders the employee that there is a specific job available for him tonight. The employee rubs the back of his neck in sighs. He said that the request is far too sudden and demands proper rewards for the work or he will leave immediately. Isidro smiles and chuckles quietly to himself. He explains that all the other workers who received requests tonight said the exact same thing before they saw the compensation and changed their minds. The man drops a heavy pouch onto the desk and states that it is the down payment for the job. The guy catches the bag and opens it to find many shiny gold coins inside. He is surprised that such a large amount of money is only the initial payment. Isidro smiles at the worker and asks if he finds the payment acceptable. The employee looks to the side with a serious expression. He asks if the assignment involves any kind of dangerous investigation. Isidro extends his hand to pass a rolled document to the worker. He states that the task is actually the employee's specialty and tells him to take it. The guy opens the paper to inspect the contents. Isidro explains that the worker is required to keep detailed notes on everything that happens inside the specific rooms marked on the floor plan. He holds the paper and asks whose mansion they are targeting. Isidro smiles closely and states that the estate belongs to a certain baron. The scene shifts outside to show the worker standing before the large stone building at night. He climbs over the perimeter wall while noting to himself that he needs to watch the room of the daughter everyone is talking about. He throws a rope around the balcony pillars, climbs up the side of the building, and lands safely on the stone floor. Then he has successfully made it. He stands outside the building and decides to begin his investigation by looking through the window. He looks closer as he notices something inside. The guy moves his hand to open the frame slightly because he cannot hear the sounds clearly from the balcony. A soft voice sounds from within the room, causing the worker to stop in surprise. He freezes on the balcony as he recognizes the identity of the person speaking inside. The guy reaches out to widen the opening and looks inside. He swallows hard and feels that the situation seems completely unbelievable. Inside the room, two figures rest under the blankets on a creaking bed. The worker realizes that he is supposed to monitor this specific activity until the morning arrives. He reflects on the fact that he is receiving high compensation to observe this event and said that it is an excellent assignment. The guy reminds himself to focus on his assignment and begins writing detailed notes in his document. He pauses his pen as another thought occurs to him. The worker sits quietly outside and reflects on the fact that this area belongs to that specific noble lady. He looks back toward the window and considers the identity of the individual accompanying her inside. Inside the room, a man suddenly sits up in the bed. The movement startles the worker, causing him to slip on the balcony edge, but he quickly catches his balance and notes that he narrowly avoided a fall. He slides the window frame open slightly to check if the area is clear. From inside the room, a voice loudly declares love for the noble lady. Inside the room, Crown Prince Alfonso looks down and speaks to Lucia by name. Outside, the worker recognizes the prince and reacts with absolute shock at the discovery. The worker stands on the balcony in disbelief, realizing that the widespread rumors regarding the young lady are completely true. Looking through the window at the couple in bed, the worker knows that the prince is still engaged to his fiancée at this point. He feels that if this affair becomes public, the consequences will extend far beyond a standard disagreement, and the prince might lose his right to the throne. He wonders about the identity of the person who requested this specific investigation. The guy gasps as he combines the prominent rumor with the very high payment he received for the job. He sits quietly and processes the realization in silence. He waves his hand dismissively and tells himself that pursuing the matter any further is a bad habit. He decides to stop investigating the deeper meaning behind his assignment. The view shifts above the estate as he looks at the room and considers if the activity will last until the morning, concluding that it is pleasant to be young. The scene transitions to a different stone castle under the crescent moon, where another employee hired by Isidro begins a separate task. A butler walks quietly down a long hall lined with large windows inside a specific ducal residence. He holds a lit candle and walks down a corridor. A hooded man hides behind a stone wall to avoid detection before quickly sneaking through a nearby doorway. So this is our second employee. Let's see what he will do. The hooded guy stands inside a dark room as the door clicks shut, leaving the space in complete silence. He walks forward and notes to himself that he has successfully entered the room. He looks around to locate his target and spots the individual across the area. The worker approaches a bed where the ducal heir Roberto is sleeping deeply like Sleeping Beauty. The worker notes that the target is completely unconscious as anticipated. He reaches into his cloak to retrieve his tools, thinking that he must begin with the first part of the operation. The worker pours a liquid substance onto a cloth. He then places the damp cloth like a slap directly over the face of the sleeping ducal heir, causing the target to groan quietly. The ducal heir turns his head while remaining deeply asleep. The worker notes that the target will stay unconscious for a long time and decides to proceed with the main task. He moves briskly around the bed to complete his assignment, pouring a substance and altering the items near the unconscious man. The man finishes his task, lets out a sigh, and wipes his forehead while standing in the room to reflect on the situation. He looks at the ducal heir sleeping in wet bedding with blocks of ice placed on his body. He really doesn't understand the true purpose of this arrangement. The guy recalls the specific moment when Isidro instructed him to ensure that the ducal heir caught a cold tonight. Standing with his arms crossed, he feels that this extreme method might cause the heir to freeze to death rather than just catch an illness. He concludes that the target must have crossed the wrong person. The guy exits the room through the double doors, stating to himself that he simply performed the task he was hired to do and now intends to return to his drink. The scene transitions to another part of the city under the night sky, where another individual employed by Isidro begins a separate operation. Walking through the alleyways of the royal capital, the next worker pulls his cloak tight against his body and remarks on how much colder the temperature drops after dark. He stops in front of a stone residence, states to himself that he has successfully located the destination, and knocks on the heavy wooden door. The door opens to reveal a bearded old man. The worker stated that Isidro sent him. The old man immediately demands to know the location of the goods. The guy extends his arm and directly hands the requested package over to the old man to complete the delivery. The old man carrying a lantern leads the worker into a room. He instructs the worker to wait inside and he will finish his task in an hour. He sits down at a desk under the stairs with a clatter. The old guy scribbles on a document with a quill pen. In the background, the worker sits down on a stool. He looks ahead in silence as he begins to recall a past meeting. Reflecting back, the scene transitions to a tavern counter with 2 mugs of beer. The same worker notes the request to steal the secret accounts book of the Domingo Company. He holds his beer mug as Isidro drops a pouch onto the table with a thud. He clarifies that the money is the down payment provided by the client. Isidro looks at the worker with a smile and asks if he will accept the assignment. The worker states that he does not mind taking the job but points out that since Isidro is a rival to Domingo, Isidro will be immediately suspected by them from the very beginning. Isidro explains that the client has already fixed that problem, adding that he would not have taken the job otherwise. As he holds out a sealed envelope, he instructs the worker to leave it inside the vault in place of the accounts book. Isidro continues to explain the details of the plan, stating that the vault is located inside the room of the son named Mario. He said that according to his information, the location is not heavily guarded and the arrangement appears quite careless. He points directly to a specific location on a map. He instructs the worker to hide the book there for a short time after stealing it, before handing it over to the client's retainer at that designated square. The worker confirms that he understands the instructions. Isidro advises him to proceed with the plan as usual and to avoid focusing on unnecessary doubts. He states that the worker will eventually understand the reality of the situation once the public commotion settles. The scene transitions back to the present, where the old man abruptly kicks the tool where this worker sits and tells him to wake up. The guy gasped and realized that he accidentally fell asleep while waiting. The old man slides the completed document over to the worker. He announces that the task is finished and instructs the worker to take the item. The guy offers his thanks to the old man and states that he will take his leave. He steps back outside into the night as the front door slams shut behind him. While moving through the streets, he proceeds on his final objective. His remaining task is to hand the item over to the client's retainer at the square. The worker arrives at an open public square where water flows from a large stone fountain. He looks around the quiet space and thinks that this area seems suitable for the meeting. He stands alone in the public square as a gust of wind passes by, noting to himself that the breeze is cold. He suddenly shifts his gaze to the side as he detects someone approaching from the darkness. A hooded figure holding a lantern walks quickly across the stone pavers of the empty plaza. The worker observes the newcomer and realizes that the individual is a woman. He stands in place as she stops before him, noting to himself that he had originally expected a man to arrive for the meeting. The woman extends her open hand forward to bring up the matter of the promised goods. She holds her hand out and commands the worker to deliver the items directly to her. The guy passes the stolen book over to her, stating that the requested items are right here. The hooded woman accepts the book and flips through the pages to check the contents while the worker watches silently. He lets out a quiet sigh as she concludes that the exchange appears to have no issues. The woman turns away to walk down the stone stairs, instructing the worker to obtain the remainder of his compensation from Isidro before bidding him goodbye. A sudden, powerful gust of wind sweeps across the open square. The blast of air pulls the woman's hood completely back, exposing her face to the worker while revealing a specific emblem on her clothing underneath the cloak. "Wait, we know who she is. This is our girl's maid Zenaida." The guy stands frozen by the fountain as Zenaida addresses him, stating that he saw absolutely nothing here today. She turns her head to glare at him directly and demands confirmation that he understands her instruction. The worker swallows hard in silence as he processes the interaction. Zenaida smiles underneath her cloak and bids the worker goodbye as she turns to walk away. He stands alone in the open square while thinking how terrifying she is and decides it is best to go home. And with this 15 hours remain. The scene transitions to a bright day outside a large glass pavilion building surrounded by trees as the sound of footsteps approaches. Inside the pavilion, teacups and food are prepared on a table where a lady sits waiting just as a door suddenly slams open. A girl rushes into the room panting from her journey. She offers her apologies and asks if she kept her companion waiting, while the seated lady reassures her that the situation is perfectly fine. The seated girl welcomes and addresses her as Lucia. Lucia smiles, explaining to her companion that she ran the entire way there. The sighted girl started the personal history of Lucia, who is very dear to her. According to her, Lucia was an only child adopted into a poor baronial household who remained optimistic and never complained about her simple livelihood. She was deeply loved by her adoptive parents, but then one day she was suddenly stricken by a mysterious fever. Her family prayed desperately for her recovery as she flitted between life and death. A few days later, as though the family prayers were finally answered, Lucia opened her eyes. Her parents immediately embraced her in her sickbed. However, the situation changed when Lucia declared to her companion that she was actually a reincarnated individual. Lucia's childhood companion observed the girl sitting across from her and realized that this person was completely different from the original Lucia she used to know. At first, she could not comprehend the situation as Lucia repeatedly insisted that she had been reincarnated into this world. After listening to the explanation multiple times, this girl finally understood that Lucia viewed herself as the main heroine of a game called Dokiden. Consequently, the girl viewed the fake Lucia in front of her as a university student who loved that specific game and now occupied the body of Lucia. The girl stated that it was impossible for all 8 male characters to fall in love with Lucia by the end of the story. Lucia laughed and countered that she had perfectly memorized the strategy guide for this exact route. The girl asks why Lucia was so determined to pursue an ending where she captured the hearts of every single man. Lucia pauses to consider the statement before preparing to explain her true motive. Lucia dramatically declared that all of her actions were done entirely for the sake of love. Her companion repeated the word love to clarify the concept, and Lucia firmly confirmed that this was the case. She states that everyone was very handsome and that she wants to be loved by all the characters she liked in her previous life. The girl states that she felt sorry for the men who would be exploited by Lucia. She replies that the comment was unnecessary because she worked hard to avoid any other route. Lucia states that they would be parting ways with the villainess the next day. The girl felt curious about where the past version of Lucia, who claimed to be happy with only her parents and a few friends, is now. She observes that the person in front of her was a selfish and greedy version of Lucia who acts like a heroine finding happiness in small things. Lucia states that she needs to leave, and the girl agreed, stating that the conversation was pleasant. Suddenly, she calls out to Lucia and states that she hopes Lucia's dreams would come true. Lucia offers her thanks as she departs, while this girl thinks that she still found this self-centered person to be angelic. The door closes as Lucia calls out that she would see her later, leaving the girl to think that watching Lucia try her absolute best to become the heroine was adorable. She asks from her heart to Lucia if she is listening to the words being spoken. This companion wants Lucia completely to herself and desires to stay by her side no matter what happens. To her, this feeling is love. As Lucia runs past the window outside, the girl recalls that she has stated those exact words herself. With 12 hours remaining before the event, birds chirp near the towers of the large stone estate while a maid enters a quiet bedroom inside. Zenaida closes the room door and ties her maid apron. She adjusts her uniform and considers how long she has served as a domestic worker for this specific family. Zenaida believes her journey starts a few years prior during her mid-teenage years. She was born as the third daughter into a viscount family that lacks significant wealth, and her parents have spoken to her one day regarding their situation. Her father apologized because the family lacks the necessary funds for her wedding engagement, prompting Zenaida to look at his apologetic expression and think about her options. At that moment, Zenaida decided that she will make a living for herself. Zenaida enters the room while thinking about how she has begun her new employment. During her early days, Alexandra acted in a spoiled and immature manner by shouting at the servants, complaining that her food is garbage, and smashing household items while Zenaida offered apologies. When Alexandra orders Zenaida to hurry up with her work, Zenaida complies while secretly reminding herself to endure the treatment until she saves enough money. She continuously answered the calls of her mistress to establish herself as a completely dependable and trustworthy servant. As Alexandra grew older, she left her selfish habits behind and became a refined woman suited to be the fiancée of the crown prince. Zenaida believed that her mistress would continue to mature and eventually become a wonderful empress. Zenaida's peaceful outlook changed completely when Lucia appeared and drew the attention of the crown prince. Alexandra's temper worsened once again, causing her to scream and vent her deep frustrations directly at the palace maids. Zenaida reflected that the environment was so horrible that she believed her lady would eventually receive divine punishment. She reminded herself to hold on just a little bit longer until she saved enough money. During that time, a sudden clicking sound signaled a shift in the situation. It was none other than Harold. He asked Zenaida to join them in bringing down that specific woman. Zenaida recalls those words as a statement whispered to her by a demon. Harold explains that the entire plan is a scheme organized by multiple people alongside the crown prince. He notes that Zenaida must be suffering from her daily duties and invites her to cooperate with them. She does not harbor any hatred toward her mistress, but she also acknowledges that her loyalty does not belong exclusively to her noble lady. Zenaida informs Harold that she wishes to join his plan while offering her inner apologies to her mistress. She originally intends to protect her own safety by ignoring the plotting and parting ways with her lady, which is how the situation is supposed to unfold before her choices change. Zenaida smiles quietly as she considers the exact reasons why she still chooses to remain and serve her mistress. She knocks on the door and enters the dark room after announcing her presence. She walks quietly across the floor toward the bed where Alexandra is sleeping soundly. Zenaida notes that she has actually realized the truth of the situation by herself, as she places a wrapped package onto a surface and pulls back the window curtains. The maid notes that she expects this change to happen the previous day as she pulls open the curtains and wishes Alexandra a good morning. Zenaida observes that her mistress has clearly changed while Alexandra makes a low sound under the blankets and rises from the bed. Alexandra inquires about the current time, prompting Zenaida to reflect on how her mistress has transformed into a completely different, wicked master. Zenaida states that dawn has arrived exactly as requested, reflecting on how Alexandra stretches after suddenly losing her long-standing affection for the crown prince and selling all her collected valuables without hesitation. The maid stands silently by the large window and considers what steps Alexandra will take next. Zenaida wonders how her mistress will alter the entire situation, just as Alexandra remembers the matter and inquires if the stolen account book has been received. The maid confirms that she has successfully obtained the book and left it on the table, causing Alexandra to smile with complete confidence. Our girl states that this specific evidence will ensure that the impudent Mario obeys her every command. A sudden knock sounds at the bedroom door as a servant outside offers an apology for the early disruption and announces that a visitor has arrived to see Alexandra. Alexandra expresses confusion and irritation regarding why she should meet with a visitor who is bold enough to arrive at her home so early without any prior notice. The panicked maid standing at the door explains that she understands the rudeness of the visit but notes that the entire house staff is currently in a major rush. The maid states that the guest waiting downstairs is Lord Mario of the Domingo firm, causing Alexandra to look up in sudden surprise. Our lady smirks as the identity of the unannounced visitor clarifies the immediate situation for her. She curls up on her bed and bursts into wild, loud laughter, which completely confuses the young maid while Zenaida watches her mistress with quiet amusement. Alexandra recovers her composure and agrees to see the man, ordering the maid to place him in the smallest drawing room, and the maid quickly confirms her understanding. Our lady addresses Zenaida and suggests that they take a very long time to change her clothing because the visitor is likely already in a terrible mood. Alexandra walks across the bedroom, stating how much she looks forward to seeing his reaction, while Zenaida stands by the window and listens silently. Zenaida bows her head and agrees to follow the instruction, thinking to herself that her lady remains a wicked woman but acknowledging that she is now genuinely excited to see what happens next. The maid resolves to serve her mistress until the very end of her journey. Alexandra notices her laughing and demands to know what she says. Zenaida claims it is nothing at all and offers to prepare a dress for the meeting. Alexandra writes a formal letter addressed to Sir Mario. She states her hope that he is well and offers her congratulations on the steady growth of his company under his leadership. She also informs him about a series of recent robberies taking place in the capital. As her maid attaches a necklace, the letter continues with Alexandra advising Mario to maintain the highest level of caution regarding the matter. She adds her belief that he has already placed more security at all of his properties. The letter concludes by revealing that the author of the words is ducal daughter Alexandra. Our girl turns around in her gown and tells her maid Zenaida that it is time for them to leave the room. She knows that a dress serves as the proper armor for a noble lady. 12 hours remain before the main event while a man sits by himself on a couch inside a large room. The waiting guest is identified as Mario, the heir of the Domingo Company, who shows heavy signs of growing irritation. Alexandra enters the drawing room and offers her apologies to Mario for the delay. She explains to him that she required more time than usual to finish changing her clothes. Our girl walks toward her seat while observing her guest, noting to herself that Mario is indeed very frustrated. She takes her place and speaks to him to begin the conversation. Alexandra asks Mario what business brings him to her home so early in the morning. Mario clenches his fist tightly against his chair and tells her to stop playing dumb. He loudly accuses Alexandra of stealing from him. Alexandra calmly asks what he is talking about and states that she has not stolen anything. Mario slams his hand down on the table and demands to know what the item is if she claims innocence. Alexandra identifies the crumpled paper with the dark wax seal on the table as the letter she sent to him out of concern, stating that she is glad to see it arrived safely. Our girl remarks that the safe arrival of the letter is relieving, while Mario glares back at her with a look of intense shock. He stands up abruptly from his seat and shouts at Alexandra to stop playing him for a fool. Our girl remains completely calm beside Zenaida and states that she has done nothing wrong, prompting Mario to demand an explanation for how her letter appeared inside his locked vault. Alexandra internally notes how noisy her guest is being before asking if he is confirming that something was stolen from his vault. Mario tells her to stop playing dumb, which causes her to say his name directly. Mario states that he will ask her the question one more time. She focuses her gaze on him and states clearly that something was indeed stolen. Mario instinctively responds that he has been saying that exact phrase before realizing his mistake and trying to change his statement. Alexandra watches him with a smirk as she reflects on the massive blunder he just committed. Our cunning girl asks what exactly was stolen. Mario falters while Alexandra thinks that acknowledging the existence of a hidden ledger is the same as admitting the crimes committed by the company. The company crimes, which include the human trafficking of prostitutes and hiring mercenaries to rob and kill people to continue operating a mine. Alexandra states that the involvement of the Domingo Company in these crimes is well known and notes the consequences if the ledger detailing these acts was stolen. She notes that the outcome depends entirely on whether the information written inside the ledger is true. Alexandra remarks that many people would become quite disillusioned, while a stunned Mario recognizes the book in her hand. Our girl holds up the book and asks if something is wrong, prompting a furious response from Mario, who tells her that she will not get away with this while Alexandra calmly fans herself. Alexandra knows that Mario is one of the capture targets for the Potato Girl and likely intended to declare that she would face condemnation today regardless of her actions. She thinks that it is unfortunate for Mario because she will be the one on top in the end. Which is why she will have him disappear because of this. Alexandra states that she wants to know what business Mario has at her estate. She instructs Mario to leave if he came only to waste time by yelling at her, which causes a startled Mario to ask her to wait. Mario asks Alexandra what she wants from him. Our cunning girl states that the matter is simple and notes that he only needs to show some sincerity, leaving Mario surprised. Mario shouts that he will never do such a thing for someone like her. Alexandra lets out a sigh and states that since he still does not understand, she will make the reality clear to him. She defines him as the son and heir of the great merchant Domingo while telling her exact identity. Alexandra details her status as the daughter of a duke and the fiancée of the prince. She states that Mario is only a commoner who became wealthy. She notes that his current actions are not the correct way to speak to the future queen. Mario stands frozen as the harsh reality of his situation becomes clear to him. Alexandra reflects on her time at the academy where people from all social classes were admitted and allowed to speak freely regardless of status, which previously caused her to ignore the complaints and behavior to her regarding the bullying of Lucia. Our girl reminds Mario that they are currently inside the estate of a duke. She asks him if he honestly believes it is still acceptable to behave in the same manner he did while at the academy. Mario stammers in response and finds himself completely unable to form a proper argument against her words. He drops his weight forward and slams his hands heavily onto the floor. Mario lowers his entire body into a kneeling position on the ground directly in front of Alexandra. The guy groans and quietly begs for mercy, prompting Alexandra to state directly that she cannot hear what he is saying. Mario presses his head against the floor and begs Alexandra to return the secret company ledger to his family. Alexandra chuckles and agrees to return the book, noting internally that she almost burst out laughing at his display. Mario looks up with sudden hope before Alexandra specifies that she will do so on a single condition. Our girl states that she wants Mario to avoid attending the banquet later that day because he is not feeling well. This statement causes Mario to react with sudden shock. Mario attempts to object, but Alexandra asks if there is any problem. She states her belief that this arrangement is a much better option than having his company crimes exposed, which prompts Mario to clench his fist tightly. Alexandra states that the future of the company rests entirely in his hands and requests his final choice. Mario groans silently while Alexandra watches him wait. Suddenly, our girl stands up quickly and declares that she has had enough of the farce. She states that she does not possess the time to entertain him further, which startles Mario. She asks for a guarantee that he will not abuse the secret ledger. Mario submits to her terms and states that he understands the situation. He confirms that he will not attend the upcoming gathering. Alexandra internally marks the interaction as a success and reflects that Mario has been fully managed. She informs Mario that she will arrange for the ledger to be delivered to his family the next morning, then instructs Zenaida to have someone guide him out of the estate, which the maid accepts. Our girl lifts her dress and turns toward the exit, addressing Mario to wish him a good day. She pauses to add an afterthought, stating that she almost forgot to mention that Mario is also forbidden from contacting any other people. Alexandra states that if Mario does anything suspicious, she will deliver the ledger to his rival, Isidro. Mario gives his verbal agreement to her terms as Alexandra departs and the doors click shut. Later, our girl notes that the interaction was successful and went well, while Zenaida states that she feared Mario would attack them due to his level of anger. Our girl expresses her desire to have breakfast, and Zenaida agrees to lead the way to the dining room until an outside voice calls out Alexandra's name. Alexandra's mother arrives and asks where she has been, prompting Alexandra to explain that she was managing business affairs. The mother then reveals that a letter from the king has just arrived. The mother clarifies that the contents of the royal message expressed the king's desire to have breakfast with Alexandra. Alexandra realizes that the meeting is scheduled for the current moment, while her mother notes that this immediate timing is expected since Alexandra requested the audience herself. Our girl reflects internally that she expected the audience to occur around noon and considers that the entire royal family will be present together for the meal. She realizes that Alfonso will now prematurely discover her plan to break the engagement. Alexandra reasons that she intended to keep her choices hidden until the gathering. The mother instructs her to go change her clothing while she summons the carriage, adding that she must not keep the royal family waiting. Zenaida addresses Alexandra to ask what their next course of action will be given the sudden change in the situation. Alexandra considers the lack of alternative options under the current circumstances and firmly states her intention to go to the palace. Our lady orders Zenaida to quickly prepare a proper dress for the audience, and her maid confirms her understanding of the instruction as the scene transitions to the royal palace. A palace butler escorts Alexandra through the grand stone hallways and states that the staff has been expecting her arrival. The butler opens the double doors and informs Alexandra that their majesties are already seated inside, prompting Alexandra to offer her formal thanks. She observes her surroundings and reflects internally that while she visited this palace many times during her childhood, she has never felt this nervous before. Alexandra takes a steady breath and steps forward into the grand dining hall where the royal family sits at a long table, offering her formal apologies for keeping them waiting. She performs a graceful curtsy to offer her greetings to the monarchs, while internally determining that it is finally time to settle the matter of her engagement. With exactly 10 hours remaining until the scheduled gathering, Alexandra enters the grand dining room as her name is called out to mark her arrival. The king, Empress Mariania, and Prince Gerald maintain a steady, silent focus as they look directly toward the entering guest. Standing before the long dining table underneath a large chandelier, Alexandra bows and offers her formal greetings to their majesties. Prince Gerald and his sister sit side by side at the table, quietly observing Alexandra as she stands before the royal family. The king instructs Alexandra to raise her head, prompting her to immediately look up and confirm her compliance. Our girl looks toward the unoccupied area of the table and thinks that Lord Alfonso is not present in the room. The king informs Alexandra that Alfonso has already gone to the academy to prepare for the later gathering and orders her to take a seat. She asks to be excused as he adjusts the chair for Alexandra, who sits down while silently realizing that the king completely saw through her thoughts. The king states that he is sorry to hold this conversation during a meal. Alexandra replies that she is instead grateful for their time. The king suggests keeping the discussion brief. He asks Alexandra to clarify if her request to end her engagement with Prince Alfonso is a serious choice. Alexandra confirms that her choice is serious, which causes Prince Gerald and the surrounding listeners to react with sudden shock. Our girl formally declares her intention to dissolve her engagement with Prince Alfonso. The king asks if Alexandra understands the impact this decision will have on both the royal family and the ducal family. Alexandra is already fully aware of the consequences. Our girl reflects internally that her personal honor will suffer damage and that finding a future marriage partner will become much harder. Alexandra remarks that the prince no longer loves her and that keeping the engagement is now harmful to both sides because of her own failure. But she silently disagrees with her self-blame. Our girl finishes her speech by stating that Prince Alfonso is not to blame for this situation. The king acknowledges her statement and lowers his head to offer his formal apology, which leaves Alexandra staring in complete surprise. She requests the king that he cannot bow to her and requests that he raise his head. The king states that his unworthy son has hurt her feelings. The empress describes the situation as pathetic and offers her sincere apologies directly to Alexandra. Alexandra surprised to see that even his adoptive mother is apologizing to her, before she begs them to stop. Following a brief silence, the king looks forward and declares that he will grant her wish to end the engagement. King Carlos officially declares in his own name that the engagement between the two of them is annulled, prompting Alexandra to softly voice her agreement. Our girl offers her full gratitude to the monarch. Alexandra silently focuses her thoughts while the king suddenly brings the topic about the identity of the person Alfonso loves while the empress turns to address the king. The empress firmly states that the idea of allowing an unrefined and uneducated girl into the royal family is completely unacceptable, causing Alexandra to react with surprise. Alexandra remembers that the queen favored marriage in the original game and realizes that her choices have altered the story. Seizing her chance, she voices her complete agreement with the empress and states that marrying someone outside of a ducal lineage would be entirely unbecoming for the prince. The king addresses the table regarding Alfonso, stating his belief that the prince will not marry anyone else. Alexandra intervenes to ask if she may be permitted to present a new proposal to their majesties. Our girl explains that she previously recommended her sister Viviana to her family for the role of fiancée, noting that Viviana is close to Lady Lucia and that the prince would likely not oppose the arrangement. Alexandra suggests that if the prince still wishes to take Lady Lucia as his wife, the royal heir can instead come from Viviana. But the empress said that this compromise is nowhere near enough. The empress will only accept the situation if Alfonso completely renounces his claim to the throne. The king states his complete agreement with Empress Mariania, while Alexandra reacts to the turn of events as an entirely unexpected development. She inquires if this change means Prince Gregorio will now become the new crown prince. The king clarifies that Prince Gregorio has just been engaged to the first princess of a neighboring country, catching the listener completely by surprise since he had no previous knowledge of the matter. Alexandra looks across the table and thinks that the circumstances leave Gerald to be the only one left. He formally declares to the young Prince Gerald that he will be the next successor to the throne. Alexandra sits in complete silence and struggles to form any response to the sudden announcement. The king turns to his younger son and asks if he understands the weight of this new responsibility, causing Prince Gerald to look up in sudden surprise. The prince tightens his mouth to collect his composure before placing a hand over his chest and firmly voicing his agreement to the monarch. Alexandra falters in her thoughts as she tries to speak up. Our girl wonders if her sister will marry Prince Gerald, prompting the king to ask what she means and clarify that he only agreed to end her engagement with Alfonso. The king explains that if Gerald becomes the crown prince, Alexandra will simply become his new fiancée instead, which leaves her completely stunned as she listens to the condition. Alexandra silently processes her deep confusion while the king offers a calm smile. Both Prince Gerald and Alexandra turn toward each other with heavily flushed faces as they simultaneously react in absolute disbelief. Empress Mariania claps her hands together happily and loudly declares that the new marriage arrangement is an excellent idea. Alexandra processes internally about what kind of development has occurred. The king asks Gerald to share his opinion, causing the young prince to blush and stammer in response. Gerald looks away from the table in silence while Alexandra watches him from across the large table. Our girl maintains her quiet focus as Gerald pauses to collect his thoughts. He focuses forward and begins to speak his mind. Gerald loudly declares his desire to have Alexandra as his wife, leaving her completely frozen in shock. Alexandra reacts with total confusion and silently wonders if something is wrong with Gerald as well. Back at the mansion, Zenith smiles cheerfully and offers her formal congratulations to her lady. Alexandra glares at the current sequence of events and notes internally that she is not happy with this development at all while Zenith laughs quietly in the foreground. Zenith walks beside her mistress outside the palace building and mentions that Prince Gerald has always admired Alexandra, noting that this admiration appears to have developed into a romance. Our girl reflects that she never viewed the prince in that manner, but Zenith counter-argues that it is a mistake to view him as a child because he is currently growing fast and will quickly become a splendid adult. Looking serious, Alexandra considers that it has been a long time since she last saw the prince, noting to herself that he has indeed grown taller and more manly. The memory of Gerald loudly declaring his desire to make Alexandra his wife flashes through her mind, causing her face to turn red with embarrassment. Alexandra grips her head in frustration, silently demanding to know why she is reacting with such embarrassment, while Zenith stands behind her enjoying the performance. Zenith shifts the topic to note that her lady is scheduled to visit the king's brother, stating an inquiry regarding the purpose of the business there. Alexandra clears her throat and clarifies that she is not the individual who requested this visit, as they walk together down a checkerboard-patterned hallway. They enter the room and exchange morning greetings with ducal daughter Letizia, while Alexandra observes her and reflects internally that the young woman is the next chess piece in her master plan. She considers that the king's brother, Prince Felipe, is also a capture target for the heroine, concluding that since even the merchant Isidro cannot send assassins into the palace, she must set a trap herself. Letizia continues writing at her desk and asks Alexandra what she can do for her since she is currently busy helping the prince, prompting Alexandra to state that she understands and explain that she came to give her a present today. She stops her work to ask if the gift is intended for her, while Alexandra smoothly pulls a hidden object out from her clothing. Alexandra places a small glass bottle firmly onto the desk, causing Letizia to stare at the item in absolute shock. Letizia stands up abruptly with a loud clatter and demands to know where Alexandra obtained the object, while Alexandra remains perfectly still. Our cunning girl explains that she previously overheard Letizia searching for the item and subsequently ordered it from a company she frequently visits, adding that she had a feeling Letizia wanted it while Letizia clicks her tongue in nervous frustration. Alexandra instructs Zenith that it is time for them to leave the room, turning away to walk out the door while addressing Lady Letizia one final time. She offers a calm profile smile as she states that she sincerely wishes for Letizia's happiness, leaving the young woman completely frozen with a pale, terrified expression. Letizia remains completely alone in the quiet room as the sound of footsteps fades away, while outside the grand palace building under the bright sky, the maid calls out to her lady. Zenith asks her mistress what item she gave to the young woman just now, prompting Alexandra to chuckle quietly and begin her explanation. Letizia stares blankly down at the desk in grim realization, while Alexandra maintains a confident smile and declares that the item is a magical potion. Letizia reflects on her long-standing admiration for Prince Felipe, a feeling she has carried deep within herself for a very long time. Because she and the prince were close in age, they were able to meet many times during their youth. She viewed him as an honest and sincere person, which caused her to fall in love with him. Letizia was unable to convey her true feelings to the prince because he chose to remain unmarried in order to support his older brother, the king. She decided that she would also remain single, and she subsequently began serving Prince Felipe directly as his retainer. Letizia hoped that by staying constantly by his side, the prince might one day view her as a woman, though she recognized that this hope was very faint. The days spent supporting the prince were happy and fun for her, right until the moment he called out her name to interrupt her work at her desk. A child came into their life. The baronial daughter Lucia appeared and said that it was nice to meet Letizia. Prince Felipe had originally helped Lucia when she became lost inside the castle, and the prince formally introduced Letizia to the newcomer. Lucia remarked that Lady Letizia was very beautiful, and Letizia offered her thanks in return. She observes that Lucia made no effort to hide her status as a country girl, and the days when Lucia visited the prince became increasingly frequent. And one day, Letizia stopped in the hallway when she noticed unexpected sounds coming from inside a room. Letizia looked inside and saw Prince Felipe laughing happily with Lucia by the window. Even though Letizia was always close to the prince, she had never seen him laugh in that manner before. She realized that the prince had changed because he constantly talked about Lucia and even started neglecting his work. Somewhere along the line, his dignified appearance completely disappeared. All of Letizia's past feelings of love and regret were suddenly overwhelmed by a deep sense of jealousy as she watched the prince. Letizia did her best to swallow all of her difficult emotions, but in the end she could not contain them and called out loudly to Prince Felipe. She confronted the prince directly, stating that his work efficiency had declined ever since that girl began visiting him and declaring that the girl should be forbidden from visiting. Prince Felipe addressed Letizia by name and demanded to know if her statement was intended as a piece of advice or as an official order, leaving Letizia staring in shock. Seeing the prince react in that manner, Letizia realized that the man she had always admired was no longer within her reach as he turned his back and walked away. Letizia gripped her dress tightly as her chest felt as if it burst open regarding the person she had always admired, unable to understand how he had become like this. She reflects that there was only one reason for the events that followed, recalling the moment Lucia introduced herself. Letizia did her best to keep the girl away from the prince, but Lucia also managed to attract other powerful noblemen, including the son of the general and the son of a duke. Sitting alone at her desk, Letizia pondered why these events were occurring, realizing that it was almost as if Lucia knew exactly what was coming and had anticipated every outcome. Faced with the unfolding reality, Letizia concluded that she had no choice but to use the secret magic potion. She had established a secret agreement with the Domingo Company and proceeded to walk toward the designated meeting location under the cover of night. The secret operation failed when an unexpected individual suddenly called out to Letizia by her title, catching her completely off guard in the dark alley. Crown Prince Alfonso confronted the hooded Letizia while holding the small bottle, demanding to know why the most trusted retainer of Prince Felipe was involved in such actions while Lucia stood watching from behind. Letizia expressed her frustration and wondered why the Crown Prince was present at that location. Prince Felipe arrived to address Letizia directly by her name, while Letizia looked at the other person who was none other than the owner's son of the Domingo Company. Lucia loudly stated that it was wrong to disrespect Prince Felipe's feelings in such a manner. Letizia could only utter a brief sound. Prince Felipe recognizes the true nature of the situation and states that they should promise to keep the matter entirely between themselves. Lucia tells Letizia that she hopes Letizia will change her mind and continue to be a good friend to her uncle, while Letizia begins to realize the scope of what is happening. She realized the painful reality that everyone has fallen completely in love with Lucia while rain pours heavily over the palace tower. As the storm continues outside the castle walkways, Prince Felipe notices Letizia and states that the timing is perfect because he wants to consult her on a certain matter. Prince Felipe explains that Lucia has invited him to attend their next gathering and requests Letizia to help him decide what he should wear, causing Letizia to weep silently under her cloak as she addresses her lord. Through her tears, Letizia addresses the prince directly and asks if Lucia is indeed the one that he loves. Prince Felipe responds with a gentle expression and openly confirms that he loves Lucia with all his heart. After hearing that, Letizia could no longer stand the situation and decides that she should simply disappear from his life if she is going to remain this miserable. She was originally planning to resign from her position as his retainer, but her path completely changed since Alexandra arrived and left the potion bottle on her desk. Letizia looks down silently as her hand reaches out toward the small bottle on the surface. Later, she knocks on the door and informs Prince Felipe that it is time for a break as she carries a tray with tea. Prince Felipe looks up from his desk to thank her and states that he will accept the drink as she approaches. Prince Felipe takes a sip from his teacup while Letizia watches him closely, noting a sudden uncomfortable reaction from the prince. He suddenly cries out in pain and knocks over his teacup onto the paperwork, prompting Letizia to shout out to him. Letizia realizes internally that she did not check the liquid because the bottle looked identical, and she begins to fear that the substance is actually poison. Letizia moves closer to ask if something is wrong and where he is hurt, but Prince Felipe hunches over his desk and states that he is fine and there is no problem. She states that she will go call a doctor immediately and tells him to rest, but Prince Felipe abruptly slaps her hand away and loudly forbids her to touch him. Felipe sweats and gasps heavily for air while commanding Letizia not to say anything, leaving her to stand back and observe his condition in silence. Letizia experiences a sudden realization as she looks at her hands, understanding that the potion is the real deal and represents everything she wanted and wished for. She requests Prince Felipe to take a rest in the next room and asks him to hold on to her, but Prince Felipe tells her to go away and she states that she will not do so. Letizia instructs Prince Felipe to be patient. The prince grows dizzy as sweat pours down his face. He clicks his tongue and gasps heavily for air. He weakly calls out Letizia's name as she leans over him. Suddenly, he grabs Letizia and pins her down on the floor. The surrounding furniture breaks completely under their weight. Letizia lies on the wooden floor and addresses Prince Felipe by his title. Prince Felipe rests over her while gasping heavily for breath. He tells Letizia to run away because he does not want to hurt her. Letizia listens to his warning and responds with a quiet smile. She states that the situation is perfectly fine. Letizia holds Felipe tightly and declares that she has been waiting for this day, leaving the prince completely confused. Letizia looks down with a gentle expression and declares her love for Felipe. He opens his eyes wide in absolute shock. She spreads her arms wide and tells the prince to do as he likes. The countdown shows that 8 hours remain before the gathering while rain pours over the stone pavilion building. Prince Felipe's final shout echoes out, followed by a soft sound from within the quiet room. Lucia smiles happily as she recalls how wonderful her time with Prince Alfonso was the previous night. Her companion notes that Lucia appears to have had an excellent time, and Lucia laughs while offering her thanks. Her companion asks if it is finally time for the condemnation event, concluding that the story will successfully reach the reverse harem ending without encountering any issues. The companion raises her teacup and inquires if something is wrong, causing the conversation to stall. Lucia learns that both Sir Roberto and Sir Mario are sick that day, and she grows anxious upon realizing that Sir Balthasar has also vanished. She explains that this development indicates someone is no longer following the script, leaving both girls to wonder who could have caused such a disruption. Lucia thinks that Lady Alexandra is capable of doing this, prompting her companion to point out that the noble lady showed no signs of being different before, though Lucia still thinks there is no other suspect. She points out that everyone else was resting at the time, leading her companion to realize that Lady Alexandra might have suddenly remembered her past life the previous day. The companion instructs Lucia to calm down, stating that a person can do very little in a single day and expressing her belief that the remaining targets should still be safe. Lucia confirms that everyone else is fine, stating that it would be impossible even for a reincarnated person to undo her fate in a single day. She notes that it is difficult to meet the hidden path in the first place, reassuring herself that she is absolutely fine. Lucia remarks that there is nothing to panic about when thinking over the situation, stating that she is simply being impatient. The companion listens in silence and considers that the situation may be exactly as Lucia says. The companion reflects that if Lucia is correct and Alexandra is indeed reincarnated, the noble lady possesses the finances and connections to make those changes possible. She feels that Lucia currently still thinks she can get away with her actions, though it remains unknown who will ultimately win in the end. She considers what will happen to Lucia if things continue as they currently are. Lucia observes her companion and asks if something is wrong. The companion chuckles and states that nothing is wrong, reflecting internally that everything will have gone exactly how she wanted should that outcome occur. She tells Lucia to enjoy the gathering, and Lucia voices her agreement as rain continues to fall outside the pavilion. 7 hours remain before the main event as a knocking sound echoes outside the stone residence. Inside the room, the maid informs Alexandra that Sir Isidro has arrived to see her, prompting Alexandra to give instructions to send the visitor inside. Isidro steps through the doorway and requests to be excused, stating that he has arrived to deliver his report exactly as they previously agreed. Alexandra stands by the window and states that she has been waiting for him, while Isidro explains in response that he was delayed. As the maid stands waiting in the background, Isidro stands with our girl and suggests that they begin their meeting with a specific matter. Isidro hands over a packet of documents and explains that it contains the report for monitoring the mansion of the Baron, while Alexandra takes the papers and offers her thanks. She begins to flip through the pages of the document in silence. As she continues reading, her expression changes and she internally states her confusion regarding what she is looking at. Isidro chuckles and explains that the writer has a steady habit of composing reports in the style of a novel, causing Alexandra to realize the reason for the layout. She looks down at the pages and observes that the text is written like an erotic novel, leaving her completely speechless while noting that the work is impressive. Isidro inquires if the actual content of the report is correct, and Alexandra confirms that the information is natural without any issues. She smiles behind the paperwork and notes that this confirmation leads to a clear conclusion. Our Lady notes that His Highness abandoned his fiancée and laid hands on another woman, stating that she is not incorrect in her assessment. Isidro smiles and agrees that this indeed seems to be the exact case. Alexandra considers that if this information becomes public knowledge, the two individuals will not get away scot-free, realizing she can use the report as a perfect pretext to place the blame on them instead. Our girl changes the subject to inquire about the status of the other assignments, and Isidro confirms that he has the updates ready. Isidro explains that the general's son, Sir Baltasar, has an upset stomach after a maid secretly gave him a laxative, ensuring it is impossible for him to attend the gathering today. He continues his report by stating that the Duke's son, Sir Roberto, has developed a very high fever this morning while shivering in his bed. Alexandra states that the news is quite worrying, and Isidro agrees in a shameless manner while pretending to wonder what could have happened to both men. Isidro mentions a separate piece of information that he gathered before his arrival, stating that a major commotion just took place at the residence of the king's brother. He reveals that rumors claim Prince Felipe has violated the lady who assists him, causing Alexandra to look on in sudden surprise. She reacts quietly to the news, holding a trembling hand over her mouth as she processes the update. Alexandra feigns deep shock aloud over the indecent actions of the Royal Highness while her maid watches silently in the background. Internally, she knows that Alexandra is the true cause of the situation and our girl offers her full gratitude to her. Isidro remarks on how unusual it is for someone as principled as the prince to act so indecently, noting that the target did not even consume the powerful aphrodisiac provided the previous day. Alexandra agrees completely, stating that the turn of events is truly unbelievable and terrible. He suggests that they accept this outcome for the time being and directly addresses Alexandra to transition to their next matter. Isidro extends his hand to deliver a small slip of paper, stating that this fulfills her final request, which causes Alexandra to look at the item in surprise. Alexandra looks down at the document in silence. Isidro instructs her that she will successfully meet the designated individual if she proceeds to that specific location at the appointed time. He lowers his head and advises Alexandra to remain extremely cautious during her task, prompting Alexandra to confirm that she fully understands the instruction. Alexandra addresses Isidro directly with a calm smile, offering her full appreciation and stating that his assistance has been a great help to her plans. Isidro closes his eyes with a satisfied expression and responds to her gratitude by stating that he only asks for her continued patronage in the future. Our girl calls out to Zenaida, declaring that they will leave for the plaza in 1 hour. She instructs her maid to make all necessary preparations immediately, and Zenith confirms her understanding. Alexandra reflects that 6.5 hours remain until the gathering. She notes that there are 3 capture targets left and determines that Prince Alfonso will be the final individual she deals with, meaning she must manage the other 2 targets over the next few hours. While Zenith assists her with her dress in front of the mirror, Alexandra decides that she will personally handle one of the remaining targets. Meanwhile, Carolina takes care of the other individual. Alexandra maintains complete confidence in Carolina, who is currently at the academy building. She believes that Carolina will not fail and she will bring back results that exceed Our Lady's original expectations. With 6 hours remaining before the main event, Carolina arrives outside the teacher's office at the academy. She takes a steady breath, knocks on the door, and receives permission from a voice inside to enter the room. Carolina asks to be excused as she steps inside the office. She addresses Teacher Theodore directly and asks if she may speak with him for a moment. Teacher Theodore turns in his seat to greet his visitor and asks Carolina if there is anything wrong. Carolina closes the door behind her and states that she has caught wind of a nasty rumor. Theodore repeats the word to clarify her meaning, and Carolina confirms that this is the case. She continues her statement and focuses her gaze forward, telling him directly that the rumor claims he has been involved in an indecent relationship. Theodore acknowledges the statement and notes that he has lived a peaceful life until now, adding that he did not expect such rumors to spread. Carolina looks at him firmly and reminds him that it is against the law to enter into a relationship with a student unless the couple is formally engaged. Theodore remains calm and claims he does not know what she has heard, advising her to pay the matter no attention. Carolina states clearly that his actions are far more exposed than he realizes, prompting Theodore to ask for clarification on her meaning. She opens her notebook and points out that he began frequently going out with a specific female student 1 year ago. Theodore turns his head away and crosses his arms, stating that he has no recollection of those events. Carolina reads from her records and explains that the meetings originally began as trips to the botanical gardens for extracurricular study before gradually turning into dinners together. Theodore maintains his smile and states that he does not understand her words, suggesting that she might be confusing him with someone else. Carolina closes her book and dismisses his denial before reminding him of specific details from the previous week, noting that after he and Lady Lucia visited the theater, they took a walk on the beach where he held the young woman in a close hug. Theodore lets out a sigh and shares his surprise that Carolina investigated the matter to such a degree, adding that he spent considerable effort disguising himself during his outings. Carolina states that Theodore has now openly admitted to his actions and requests to know his next steps. Theodore stands by the window and remarks that he does not care about the situation in the first place, explaining that her words are simply rumors without any solid evidence, which startles Carolina. He looks out the window with a smile and explains that he has always performed his duties faithfully, noting that the headmaster would never believe a baseless accusation even if this story managed to reach him. Carolina acknowledges the current state of the conversation and states that she wants to ask about a specific matter she does not understand. She looks across the room at Theodore and inquires about the reasons why he felt attracted to someone like that girl. Carolina details her disapproval of the young woman, stating that as a baron's daughter, she should remain aware of her own social status instead of constantly acting like the center of the world. She points out that the girl regularly shows affection to many different gentlemen, causing the other female students at the academy to shun her completely because of that behavior. Carolina focuses her gaze forward and declares that she entirely fails to understand what makes such a selfish child attractive to anyone. Theodore slams his fist forward and commands Carolina to choose her next words wisely, causing her to startle at his sudden movement. Theodore focuses his gaze intensely and clarifies that the young woman is not a child to him, declaring that she is instead like a mother to him. He grimaces with deep irritation while Carolina looks on with wide eyes and realizes how disgusting the matter is. Carolina steps back toward the door and reflects that the situation is exactly what Lady Alexandra previously described, recalling her warning that the gentlemen around the woman adore her to an unusual degree and noting that the country may be destroyed if everyone else behaves in the same manner. She considers her path and determines that she is not performing this task simply because Lady Alexandra told her to do so, but because as the daughter of a ducal house, she has a personal duty to protect the country. Carolina steps forward firmly and addresses the teacher, repeating that she heard about this matter from someone else and stating that there are other people who currently know the truth. She looks directly at Theodore and asks what he intends to do if Lady Alexandra discovers the truth, leaving Theodore completely startled as he contemplates the reality of Alexandra knowing. Carolina explains that Lady Alexandra would face no difficulty in spreading the truth to the public, which would instantly leave Lady Lucia as the main target of criticism, and she asks if Theodore will truly be able to remain unfazed and pretend he knows nothing when that happens. Theodore leans back against the window with a confident smirk and asks if she expects him to admit defeat just like so, stating that he will simply quit teaching when that situation occurs. Carolina states that everything will be fine and the two of them can eventually date in public, but reminds him that the girl is still only a first-year student. She points out the problem of who will protect her during her remaining 2 years of study at the academy. Carolina explains that most of the gentlemen close to her will graduate this year, leaving only the heir of the Domingo Company, who lacks the necessary authority to act as a shield because he is a commoner who received a backdoor admission. Theodore clicks his tongue as Carolina prepares to share a private matter between the two of them. Carolina reveals that Lady Alexandra plans to expose all of the gentlemen who support Lady Lucia at the gathering later that night, catching Theodore completely off guard. She notes that the Crown Prince intends to stay with her even after graduation, but points out the consequences if that arrangement is also stopped. Theodore realizes that under those circumstances no one will be left to support Lucia, and Carolina confirms that this is the case. Carolina holds out her hand and presents a new option, stating that Theodore himself could protect her instead. Theodore reacts in absolute confusion, stating that he believed she had come to the office to accuse him of a crime, which prompts Carolina to address that specific point. She offers a clear choice, stating that she can turn a blind eye to the matter as long as Theodore promises not to attend the gathering today. She raises her finger with a calm expression, adding that to put it another way, it might be better for him if he chooses not to attend. Carolina explains that Lady Alexandra intends to completely get rid of the gentlemen who participate in the event today, noting that he will remain out of trouble if he simply avoids the meeting. She extends her hand toward the teacher and points out that if he accepts these terms, he will be the only individual left among those who surround Lady Lucia. Theodore looks upward in silent realization, reflecting on the fact that this outcome means he will have Lucia entirely to himself. He places a hand over his face and bursts into wild laughter at the sudden development, stating to himself that the situation has become highly interesting. Theodore touches his hair and expresses his gratitude to Carolina for delivering the information. She responds by thanking him for his cooperation instead and wishes him a good day as she exits the room. While walking away through the school hallway, Carolina thinks about how stupid the teacher is being. He fails to realize Lady Alexandra actually intends to drive the young woman completely out of the academy. Carolina pauses near the exit and states that she has successfully performed her part of the operation. She looks out over the open campus courtyard and leaves the rest of the strategy in the hands of Lady Alexandra. Outside, Alexandra lets out a loud sneeze, which catches Zenaida completely by surprise. Zenaida asks Alexandra if she is alright after sneezing. Alexandra, wearing a new dress, stands outside and responds that she is fine. Zenaida states that it is almost time and asks if she is ready. Alexandra confirms that she is perfectly ready for the task. Below them, the bell inside the academy clock tower begins to ring. She notes that the time has arrived. Alexandra steps forward and announces that it is time to go. Zenaida advises Alexandra to be careful, and our girl confirms that she will do so as she walks down the stone path ahead of the guards. A countdown box indicates that 5 hours remain before the main event. Alexandra clenches her fist and internally states that this is her final move before the final battle begins. Alexandra reflects that most of the heroine's captured target allies are no longer in play. She notes that the final character is difficult to encounter in the first place, but only a single target remains. With only 5 hours left until the gathering, Alexandra stands determinedly outdoors in her vibrant red gown. She looks up at the sky and firmly decides that this will be her final move. Alexandra visualizes a letter containing instructions to wait on the benches next to the row of trees at noon in Capitol Park South. Sitting quietly on the wooden park bench, she silently notes that she only traveled to this location because the message told her to do so. 10 minutes later, she remains seated completely alone on the long bench. She looks forward with a dull expression and silently wonders if he is here yet while thinking about how incredibly bored she is. Alexandra looks away in disappointment and thinks that she might have had the wrong expectations, concluding that it might be impossible to meet him after all. She lets out a heavy sigh as she reflects that the person she is waiting for is a hidden character with the highest capture difficulty. She remembers that he is an infamous assassin in the city known as Elia. Elia was an orphan who survived solely on the bounties he earned from his successful assassinations. He was deeply feared even within the underworld because of his terrifying ability to kill targets without showing any hint of human emotion. While Elia was out on a normal mission, a young girl suddenly walked up to him from behind. It was the heroine, Lucia, who clasped her hands together in complete relief and happily thought that she was incredibly thankful to find someone there. Alexandra reflects that the assassin should have killed the heroine right away. When Lucia clung to him, crying out that she was scared because no one was there and begging him to take her to a brighter place, Elia hesitated for an unknown reason. After that initial meeting, Elia approached her to finish her off, but they slowly bonded due to her kindness. Elia recalls a time when Lucia insisted on finding food for some hungry stray cats while he suggested leaving them, which was the exact moment he realized his own changing feelings. Elia found himself falling in love for the very first time. Having regained his humanity, he vowed to leave the underworld for good, but Alexandra notes that his final job poses a massive problem for her. Alexandra vividly remembers that his final assignment is to poison her at the gathering. Sitting alone on the park bench, she shivers in fear as she reflects on how miserable Elia's backstory truly is. Sitting with her arms crossed, Alexandra analyzes the situation and concludes that she has successfully blocked the reverse harem route. She realizes that while making peace with the heroine would normally keep her from being killed, things have changed. Alexandra becomes completely panicked as she realizes that she will still be killed at this rate. Her mental diagram shows that while the reverse harem route is blocked, the storyline has branched directly into a fatal ending on Elia's route. She declares internally that this situation is no joke and she must do her best to avoid death. Even though she changed into plain clothes for this meeting, she realizes she cannot execute her plan if he does not show up, concluding that she should go home and figure out her next step. A sudden presence appears directly behind the bench, leaving Alexandra completely stunned. Leaning over her shoulder, Elia states that she is the client. Alexandra panics silently, wondering if this is a joke and trying to figure out exactly when he arrived. As she glances sideways in shock, Elia firmly commands her not to move. Elia demands that Alexandra tell him what she wants. Sensing an intense killing intent from the assassin, Alexandra realizes that she will undoubtedly be killed if she lets her guard down even slightly, so she nervously prepares to speak. Alexandra introduces herself as the daughter of one of the 3 great ducal houses and the fiancée of the crown prince. She explains that she had been educated to prepare as the next queen, but the recent appearance of a certain person disrupted everything. Alexandra states that the disruptive person is the Baron's daughter, Lucia. She explains that she harassed Lucia out of jealousy, which only strengthened the bonds of others with the girl and left Alexandra hated, before Elia bluntly cuts in to ask what her request is. She internally fumes over the idea of Elia regaining his humanity, feeling absolutely no sympathy for him. Although she harbors deep doubts about her own plan, she accepts that it cannot be helped and decides to keep her explanation brief. Sitting firmly on the park bench, Alexandra declares that she wants Elia to get rid of Lucia at the gathering later that day. Alexandra clarifies that she does not care how the deed is done, emphasizing that Elia simply needs to kill Lucia directly in front of the crown prince. Elia reaches for his weapon and flatly states that he cannot accept the request, causing a surprised Alexandra to ask for his reasoning. Alexandra points out that she heard he accepts requests based on their rewards, offering to pay double or whatever amount he desires. This offer completely infuriates Elia, who draws his blade and fiercely commands her to shut up. Suddenly, she starts laughing. Hearing this, Elia clicks his tongue. Instead of showing fear, Alexandra chuckles softly and confesses that she knew he would say that from the very start. Alexandra sits calmly on the bench and asks Elia directly if he loves the heroine. Elia reacts with sudden shock, sweating profusely as he wonders how she could possibly know that about him as well. She smiles knowingly at him, which only deepens Elia's shock and rage. Gripping his weapon tightly with a furious expression, Elia angrily demands to know how she dares to speak of such things. Alexandra quickly dives away from the bench to escape an incoming attack. Elia unleashes a powerful, furious strike. Elia leaps over the ruined bench, fiercely shouting that she should not think she can run away. From her position on the ground, Alexandra looks back with a wide-eyed expression and loudly yells for her hidden allies to act immediately. A large group of armed guards suddenly rushes into the area, catching Elia completely by surprise. While Alexandra flees from the chaos, the guards surround the assassin as his final shout echoes out, desperately calling Alexandra's name and telling her to wait. Zenaida rushes forward in an absolute panic, screaming out for her young lady. Alexandra clicks her tongue in frustration as she loses her footing and tumbles heavily onto Zenaida. She holds her mistress tightly on the ground, frantically asking if she is fine or hurt anywhere, while Alexandra breathlessly replies that she is fine. Zenaida strictly tells her that she must be insane to use herself as bait. Our girl declares that doing this just once is more than enough. While Alexandra and Zenaida rest on the pavement by a large stone fountain, the guards successfully overpower the assassin in the background. The guards shout out to the area that they have successfully secured him and have the situation under control. A guard looks over the area and commands the attendants to take the injured away for immediate medical treatment. She tells Zenaida to get up, completely dismissing the anxious warnings that it is dangerous to approach the captured assassin by calmly stating that it will be fine. Alexandra steps forward as the captured assassin lies pinned firmly to the ground by her guards. Looking down at him with a cold expression, she suggests that they start over and calmly greets him as Mr. Elia. Standing with her arms crossed amidst her circle of guards, Alexandra notes that it is a shame his failure happened just now. She states that Elia should have known when she called him to this location that she would ask him to assassinate his love, Lucia. Alexandra continues to speak calmly to her captive, analyzing that he only came to the park to eliminate her in order to protect Lucia. She remarks that he has never actually assassinated anyone of his own volition before, adding that he was so blinded by his anger that he failed to notice all the waiting guards. Grinding his teeth in absolute anger as he lies helpless on the pavement, Elia glares upward as Alexandra bluntly informs him that he walked straight into a trap. Alexandra looks down at the struggling assassin and notes internally how incredibly young he looks, reflecting on how even children in this game world are driven to sacrifice themselves for the heroine. However, she quickly checks her own thoughts, silently realizing that this tragic outcome is not actually the heroine's fault. She turns slightly and addresses Zenaida, asking her to clarify the official punishment for attempting to harm a member of the ducal families. Zenaida responds respectfully, stating that regardless of the underlying circumstances, the law is absolute. Zenaida speaks clearly across the courtyard where the guards hold the assassin down, formally declaring that capital punishment is completely unavoidable for his crime. Elia gasps in sudden horror as the looming threat of his execution sinks in, while Alexandra stares down at him silently with a stern expression. Alexandra reflects internally that if she had not remembered her past life, Elia might have enjoyed a happy future. Breaking her silence, she issues a sharp command to her attendants, ordering them to bypass the public authorities and bring the assassin directly to the secure cell inside her own mansion. She decides that it is time for them to leave, and Zenaida follows her command as they walk away from the area. Alexandra glances back as the guards restrain Elia, who bitterly declares his hatred for her while calling out Lucia's name. The desperate assassin screams that his actions were all for Lucia, leaving Alexandra to walk away silently in the wind. Alexandra and Zenaida arrive at their horse-drawn carriage parked outside on the stone path. As an attendant prepares the door for them to board, Alexandra promises herself that she will see Elia's fate through to the very end. She reflects that intervening is her true responsibility as a survivor while the carriage begins its journey away from the park. A stark reminder notes that only 4 hours remain until the final gathering. As a carriage arrives at the grand estate, Alexandra and Zenaida walk along the stone path toward the entrance. Zenaida leads the way while Alexandra adjusts her hair, but their return is suddenly interrupted when another maid runs toward them in a frantic panic, calling out loudly to her young lady. Inside the mansion, the frantic maid welcomes Alexandra back and explains that they have been anxiously waiting for her. Alexandra asks what the matter is, prompting the nervous maid to reveal that a visitor has arrived to see her. Alexandra dismisses the news, waving her hand as she states that she is not in the mood to greet someone right now and instructs the maid to tell the visitor to come back later. The panicked maid trembles in fear and tries to object, urgently revealing that the one waiting is His Highness Prince Gerald. Overwhelmed with frustration, Alexandra asks if the maid is joking, while the terrified attendant quickly begs forgiveness for her insolence. The maid further explains that she already informed the prince that Alexandra was out, but he insisted that he could wait and is currently staying inside the drawing room. Alexandra stands in complete stress, clutching her dress as she silently wonders what the prince is even there for, especially since they just met a few hours ago. Looking away, Alexandra considers that the prince might be there to receive her reply to the engagement. She reflects on how she did not give an answer at that time, realizing that because the matter is so important, it is completely understandable that the royal family is in a hurry. She looks down with a solemn profile expression, silently noting that she was originally planning on formally replying after the gathering. She reflects that she is happy that their majesties and Prince Gerald are willing to accept her. However, as she tightly clenches her fist in deep inner conflict, an attendant suddenly calls out to her to break her train of thought. The panicked maid apologizes to her lady and begs her to hurry up. Alexandra maintains her composure and declares that she will go ahead and get changed into appropriate clothing. As she walks up the grand staircase accompanied by Zenaida, Alexandra mentally resolves that she has absolutely no intention of accepting the royal engagement. Upon entering the drawing room, she formally addresses Prince Gerald, who has been standing patiently near the windows. Alexandra politely apologizes for keeping her guest waiting and expresses that she is honored by his visit. Prince Gerald turns around and blushes deeply at her elegant appearance, quietly addressing her as his sister-in-law. Correcting himself, Prince Gerald clears his throat and states that he should call her by her name, Alexandra. He then offers his sincere apologies for making such a sudden visit to her mansion. Alexandra assures him that it is no trouble at all and cordially invites him to take a seat so they can have some tea, which the prince gladly accepts as the warm beverage is poured into a cup. Seated across from each other at the table while the attendants finish serving, Alexandra decides to address the situation directly and asks Prince Gerald what business brings him here today. Prince Gerald agrees to be completely frank with her and looks across the table with a serious expression. He then directly asks Alexandra if she can refrain from attending the gathering scheduled for later that day. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Alexandra notes that it is an entirely unexpected request and asks for his reasons. Prince Gerald clenches his fist tightly against his leg as he explains that he overheard a shocking conversation from his older brother the previous night. He speaks out with deep concern and urgency, explicitly warning Alexandra that they are planning to formally condemn her at the gathering later today. Upon hearing the warning, Alexandra absorbs the news with absolute composure. She realizes that because even Prince Gerald's brother has openly spoken of this plot, it is completely clear that they are no longer following the original scenario, prompting her to softly comment on the revelation. Alexandra looks forward with a steady, determined expression. She firmly declares that she will still attend the gathering, recognizing that there is only one path left for her to take regardless of what the crown prince chooses to do. Prince Gerald reacts in utter shock, urgently pointing out that Alexandra will be condemned in front of everyone if she goes. Alexandra calmly takes a sip of her tea and replies that people can say whatever they want for all she cares, noting that since she is no longer his fiancée, the condemnation will achieve absolutely nothing in the end, leaving the young prince to stammer in deep distress. Unable to hide his intense emotions, Prince Gerald leans across the table and passionately declares that he simply cannot allow people to speak ill of Alexandra in such a manner. Alexandra quietly finishes her drink and places the teacup back onto its saucer, calmly stating that she is truly grateful for Prince Gerald's concern. Looking directly at her guest, she clarifies that being absent from the event is simply no longer an option for her. This firm decision leaves Prince Gerald looking completely startled as he anxiously wonders why she must go. Prince Gerald continues to protest, explaining that he knows she is an intelligent and noble lady, and urges her to tell him if she is having a hard time. Alexandra calmly cuts into his speech by addressing him by his royal title. Sitting across from the young man in front of the large drawing room windows, Alexandra directly tells the prince that she is afraid there is a major misunderstanding, leaving Prince Gerald to repeat her words in complete confusion. Alexandra confidently asks the prince if he truly thought she would just stay quiet and allow herself to be condemned at the event. Prince Gerald gasps in absolute shock at her boldness while Alexandra firmly declares that she is not joking at all. She reflects on her situation, stating that she made her own distinct efforts as a fiancée and finds it completely intolerable for those efforts to be denied. She remembers the constant disrespect she endured through Prince Alfonso's words and actions with Lucia, declaring that she can no longer tolerate any of it. Showing a confident and sharp smile, Alexandra firmly vows that she will destroy Prince Alfonso in return simply to protect her own pride. Prince Gerald sits back in absolute shock, frantically calling out to Alexandra to wait. Alexandra observes his reaction and realizes that the prince has always seen her as a kind older sister, meaning that seeing her display such malice for the first time has likely ruined that gentle image completely. She looks at the anxious young prince and recognizes that this is the specific dark path she has chosen to walk. She decides that it is a dangerous route where she does not want to get Prince Gerald involved, though she concludes that such an outcome is perfectly fine. Letting out a soft sigh, Alexandra sits back at the table and tells Prince Gerald that she has one final thing to disclose to him. The prince looks toward her with a surprised and questioning expression, waiting to hear what she has to say. Alexandra delivers a shocking statement to her guest, calmly revealing that she never actually loved Prince Alfonso. Gerald reacts with intense bewilderment, quickly telling her to wait a minute as sweat pours down his face. He demands to know if she is claiming that their entire close relationship in the past was nothing more than a complete lie. Alexandra explains that it was not exactly a lie, but rather an intentional act on her part. She remembers her past mindset with Prince Alfonso, reasoning that if they were going to spend the remainder of their lives together, they would naturally be much happier if they tried to love each other, even if that affection was just a fabricated performance. Prince looks directly at Alexandra with an earnest and desperate expression, asking if she will perform the exact same act of fabricated love once she becomes his fiancée instead. Alexandra remains perfectly still as she absorbs his heavy question. She looks directly at Prince Gerald across the table and transitions to the topic of their potential marriage, calmly declaring that she plans on refusing the engagement. This unexpected announcement leaves Prince Gerald staring back at her in absolute shock. The prince questions her decision in deep distress, protesting that both his father and mother welcome her into the family with open arms. Alexandra replies that she is deeply flattered and honored by their reception, but she firmly reminds him that she is actively trying to trap Prince Alfonso. Prince Gerald processes her words with a look of growing anxiety and sweat on his face. He realizes that her actions mean, in short, that she is actively conspiring against the royal family. Gerald considers the public fallout of her choices, wondering what those around them will think of her behavior. She openly acknowledges that her notoriety will undoubtedly spread faster than wildfire once her plans are fully set in motion. Alexandra points out that being engaged to Prince Gerald would heavily affect the reputation of the royal family. She explains that this is the exact reason why she previously suggested Viviana as a much more suitable choice for the engagement. Prince Gerald abruptly stands up and slams his hands firmly onto the table, leaning forward toward a startled Alexandra. Looking down with an expression of intense emotion and sweat pouring down his face, the young prince struggles to voice his inner feelings. He loses his composure completely and passionately shouts out that he does not want to be with anyone but Alexandra. Alexandra can only stare back at him with her eyes wide open in absolute shock at his sudden confession. Completely flustered and blushing intensely, Alexandra gasps in utter bewilderment at his exclamation. She anxiously wonders if the prince took in anything that she just explained to him, frantically calling out to His Highness to wait. Prince Gerald remains leaning over the table and states that he knows exactly what kind of person she truly is. As Alexandra watches him in stunned silence, the prince firmly adds that he knows absolutely everything about what she has been doing behind the scenes. He lets out a passionate shout, declaring that despite everything, he still absolutely wants Alexandra. Moving directly to her side, Prince Gerald drops down onto his knees right next to Alexandra's chair. He firmly takes her hand into his own and looks up at her with complete sincerity, confessing that he has loved her for a very long time. He continues his earnest declaration, placing his free hand over his chest as he looks up at her. He intensely asserts that he would gladly renounce his royal title in an instant if she desired it, regardless of what happens to the country. Looking up at her with a desperate gaze, Prince Gerald begs Alexandra to simply live with him, assuring her that she does not need to be the crown princess or a duchess. This overwhelming request leaves Alexandra completely wide-eyed and frozen in absolute shock. A deeply flustered Alexandra quickly tries to break the tension, loudly asking the young prince if he is merely joking with her. Prince Gerald simply rubs his face with a gentle smile and directly clarifies that he was not joking at all. He notes with relief that Alexandra has finally returned to her usual expressive self. He explains that he thoroughly dislikes it when she acts cold and distant, adding that he thinks it is much better for her to be this way. Alexandra looks down with an exasperated expression and notes that Gerald is indeed no longer her brother-in-law. Hearing this confirmation, Prince Gerald stays firmly on his knee and immediately asks her if she will marry him instead, leaving Alexandra completely stunned. She touches her forehead with a heavy sigh and issues a firm refusal, asking the prince if he even understands his own identity and pointing out that he cannot just give up his title. Prince Gerald quickly objects to her reasoning, desperately arguing that he is being entirely serious about his proposal. Alexandra points her finger directly in front of the startled prince's face with an intensely serious expression. She commands Prince Gerald to go back and repeat those exact same words to her only after he has fully processed everything. She explains that right now she can only see him as her brother-in-law. Smiling playfully, she adds that she will consider his proposal only when he becomes a prince, charming enough and capable of making her fall in love at first sight. Prince Gerald quietly accepts her words as his hand slips away. Sitting with her arms crossed, Alexandra internally reflects that she feels a bit guilty for acting this way, but assumes that since she spoke firmly, he will finally give up. Suddenly, Prince Gerald breaks the silence and declares with absolute determination that he will return. She stares blankly in utter confusion, trying to comprehend what just occurred. Suddenly, Prince Gerald shifts his posture with a sharp movement, causing a startled Alexandra to flinch back in her chair as he firmly places his hand down. He leans in closely over a stunned Alexandra and confidently promises that he will be right back to get her, instructing her to wait for him. Alexandra can only stare with wide, completely shocked eyes as she struggles to process his declaration. The girl bursts into a frantic, comically panicked scream of utter disbelief. Prince Gerald cheerfully bids her farewell and states that he will see her later as he exits the room, leaving a blushing Alexandra to desperately reach out and yell for him to wait a moment just as the door shuts. Outside the grand mansion building under the open sky, Alexandra panics internally over what she should do next. A smug Zenaida mentally notes that her mistress dug this hole entirely by herself, prompting an irritated Alexandra to comically snap at her maid to shut up while a stark reminder notes that only 3 hours remain until the gathering. The companion sits alone at a round table, suddenly overwhelmed by a wave of intense distress. In a fit of volatile frustration, Lucia slams her fist down onto the surface, causing a teacup to rattle violently on its saucer as dark liquid splashes everywhere. She clutches her head in absolute despair, repeatedly agonizing over why this is happening to her and why it has to occur right now. Lucia continues to spiral into a deep panic, horrified by the realization that Alexandra has somehow managed to remember her past life at such a critical moment. The companion reflects on her childhood, recalling the moment she first awakened and was able to fully remember her own past life, noting that it was soon after this profound realization that she first met the heroine. Looking back at her youth, she remembers growing up in a poor family where she struggled to make many friends. However, the young Lucia possessed absolutely no social prejudices and immediately treated her with total warmth, talking to her just like she did with everyone else. Lucia cheerfully asked her companion if she had ever suffered from a high fever, noting how incredibly painful that experience must have been. Because Lucia did not care about aristocratic status or proper decorum, the companion found herself slowly opening up to her cheerful presence. It did not take long at all before the two young girls formed a close bond and became excellent friends. She attributes Lucia's completely free and unconstrained way of thinking to the fact that she is a reincarnated individual. To the companion, absolutely everything Lucia did felt incredibly fresh and exciting, such as the day Lucia happily announced that her father had given her some sweets. This unique perspective was equally apparent in Lucia's advanced knowledge. She watched in quiet fascination as Lucia would occasionally fold pieces of ordinary parchment into paper airplanes and launch them into the air. Lucia consistently demonstrated an advanced intellect, easily solving complex problems that were considered highly difficult even for full-grown adults, leaving her companion entirely stunned as she celebrated her success. Furthermore, Lucia would casually speak about unbelievable ideas as if they were a completely natural matter of course, calmly explaining to her friend that the ground beneath them actually moves. When the companion warmly remarked that Lucia was truly amazing, the bashful girl quickly waved her hands and insisted that she had never thought of herself in that way. Smiling gently, Lucia explained that she was not personally remarkable at all, and that all of her incredible knowledge was simply due to the great people who had existed within her previous life. The companion reflects on how deeply she admired Lucia, specifically appreciating that the girl never flaunted her incredible gifts or unique knowledge. Because of this genuine humility, Lucia quickly became the absolute center of the companion's entire world. While checking the roses in a garden, Lucia asks if the companion will be entering the academy very soon, to which she happily nods. Clutching her hands together with pure excitement, Lucia rejoices that she will finally be able to fall in love with her favorite characters. The companion inquires if this is the specific game that Lucia frequently talks about, and Lucia enthusiastically confirms it. When the companion asks about the different romantic routes and wonders who Lucia will ultimately fall in love with, she notes that she was already contemplating that exact outcome. Pointing her finger upward with a bright expression, Lucia confidently declares that since she is present in this world, she fully intends to pursue a reverse harem ending. The companion initially struggles to comprehend the idea of a reverse harem, questioning how everyone could fall in love with Lucia or how she could end up engaged to the crown prince. Although Lucia cheerfully tells her to just go for it, the companion considers the statement completely out of the blue and does not truly believe it is possible. However, once Lucia formally entered the academy, the exact scenarios she had spoken about began to manifest one after another. Powerful and wealthy young noblemen quickly began to gather directly around the cheerful girl. As these events unfolded, the companion officially became Lucia's trusted confidant. Lucia regularly sought her guidance on how she should properly behave during specific parts of the game since she was not the original character, as well as how she should handle each major event. The companion reflects that she lost count of how many times Lucia came to consult her for advice. Sitting alone at the table, a sudden and serious realization unexpectedly occurred to the companion. She calls out to Lucia and directly asks what her own character is like in the game named Doki Eden. A surprised Lucia wonders what prompted such a sudden inquiry, leading the companion to explain that she was simply curious about what specific role she plays in the story. Lucia explains that the original heroine of the story does not actually possess a childhood friend like her companion. Hearing this revelation, the companion looks down in grim silence, processing the fact that her very existence is entirely missing from the original narrative. The companion reflects that being labeled a mere background character or mob friend was exactly what she expected to hear. However, at the same time, it made her deeply question the nature of this world and her place within it. Sitting alone at the table with her thoughts, she ponders how it is even possible for someone like her, who has been so close to Lucia for such a long time, to be completely omitted from the official story. As she holds her teacup close, a chilling thought occurs to the companion. She begins to consider the dark possibility that she might be an irregular existence or a glitch within the established game. Ultimately, the companion concludes that this hidden truth changes absolutely nothing about her current path. She resolves that she will still continue to play the role of Lucia's reliable childhood friend on the surface. While maintaining her friendly facade on the surface, a dark and calculating smile creeps across the companion's face. Internally, she acknowledges that she must apologize to Lucia because she has already chosen to betray her. She focuses on the bright and innocent smile of Lucia, who remains completely unaware of her friend's true thoughts. The companion admits that her hidden betrayal stems from the reality that she has fallen deeply in love with Lucia. Envisioning Lucia bound by heavy chains and trapped, the companion confesses her darkest desire. She notes that she has always wanted Lucia to belong exclusively to her and to no one else. The companion admits that she merely pretended to be advising Lucia so she could gain a full understanding of the reverse harem route. By carefully watching the events unfold around the nobleman, she successfully discovered a major hole in the story to exploit for her own goals. She reflects on her long-term strategy, noting that she carefully planted her seeds little by little over time. She reasons that if she can successfully enter that specific hole in the story, she might finally have a real chance to achieve her goals. The companion recognizes that the chances of her plan bearing fruit were originally 50-50. However, Her thoughts sharply snap back to her current situation as Lucia rages over why this unexpected development had to happen. Lucia panics in deep distress over why Alexandra is suddenly remembering her past life at this exact moment. Meanwhile, the companion observes the heroine's breakdown with a dark, hidden satisfaction, realizing internally that this setback has actually granted her a major turn of fortune. As Lucia trembles in despair at the table, the companion gently tells her to calm down. Internally, the companion ponders the fact that Alexandra is also a reincarnated individual, concluding that this twist is actually a great opportunity for her own hidden agenda. Leaning over to comfort her friend, the companion firmly states that they cannot just sit around lamenting their situation and must focus entirely on what to do next. A tearful Lucia looks up in distress and anxiously asks what they are going to do now. She looks directly at her partner and asks if she still intends to condemn Alexandra even though their chances of success are now bleak. In response, a resolute Lucia tightly clenches her fist on the table and softly vows that she will go through with it. Lucia suddenly stands up with an enraged expression, shouting directly at her companion. She furiously declares that she will force Alexandra to take full responsibility for ruining her perfect reverse harem ending. Gritting her teeth in dark fury, Lucia fiercely vows that she will never back down. She reassures herself that the crown prince alone still holds more than enough power to condemn the noble lady, maintaining that what Alexandra did to her remains an unchangeable fact. With her eyes wide with intense hatred, Lucia lets out a loud, venomous scream, declaring that she will completely destroy Alexandra. Below her outburst, the companion stands quietly in the shadows, watching the heroine slide further into madness. She kneels before Lucia at the round table, gently holding her hands to comfort her, and softly reassures her that she has her complete support. Lucia looks down with tears welling up in her eyes, deeply moved by the gesture, and softly thanks her friend while being reassured that everything will turn out fine. Smiling secretly as she looks away, the companion notes that it is finally time for them to get ready, a point with which Lucia quickly agrees. As the companion prepares her things, she reflects darkly on how clueless the heroine truly is, silently mocking her innocence while Lucia promises to do her absolute best. Stepping out toward the entrance, a determined Lucia bids farewell to her companion as she prepares to leave for the gathering. Watching her depart, the companion looks on with a hidden smirk, mentally declaring that she is the one who will actually achieve true love on this fateful day. Standing in the shadow of the doorway, she tells Lucia to be careful as she heads out into the open. As a dark aura surrounds her, the companion silently resolves that she will reveal the absolute truth to the naive heroine once her grand plan completely succeeds. The girl stands completely alone by the open doorway as a heavy rainstorm pours outside, whispering that she will be waiting right there for the heroine to return. Peering through the glass window pane with a sinister smile, she bids a final silent farewell to Lucia as she watches her depart. The scene shifts to the Grand Palace ballroom, where a large crowd of elegantly dressed noble guests has gathered. Suddenly a voice shouts what the organizers could possibly be thinking. Amidst the restless crowd, student representative Paula explains to him that they were all officially informed that Sir Balthasar was suddenly unwell. The Crown Prince stands with an annoyed and frustrated expression as he clarifies that his previous statement was not what he meant. Crown Prince Alfonso stands, visibly sweating and trembling with immense fury as he processes the news of the sudden absence. Turning his back to the crowd in deep aggravation, he clenches his fist tightly and wonders why Sir Balthasar had to get sick on this specific day of all days. Crown Prince Alfonso grits his teeth in absolute anger, his face covered in sweat as a dark expression overcomes his eyes. Student representative Paula watches him from a distance in terrified silence while the prince reminds himself of the solemn oath they all swore to formally condemn Alexandra for the absolute sake of Lucia. He wonders what happened. He wonders silently if this sudden turn of events could be Alexandra's doing. Paula asks His Highness how someone could possibly induce another person's illness. Alfonso furiously responds that Alexandra is exactly the type of person who would resort to something so incredibly underhanded. Cursing in intense frustration, Crown Prince silently resolves that he will absolutely not stand for this situation any longer. Paula asks if the prince has chosen Miss Lucia as his partner for this specific gathering. The choice is confirmed as a matter of course. He questions who else could possibly be considered a suitable partner. Despite trying to rationalize the situation, she still feels a heavy, lingering sense of doubt. Paula questions the prince directly, wondering if it is a major problem that he has chosen a completely different woman instead of his actual fiancée. Turning around with a sharp, furious glare, Crown Prince Alfonso snaps back that there is absolutely no problem with his choice. He gasps in sudden realization as he thinks about that woman's peculiar behavior earlier today. Alfonso quickly dismisses the topic, telling her that he should not be talking about it and that she has no need to worry. Lucia calls out to Prince Alfonso as she suddenly arrives at the ballroom gathering. Alfonso turns to her in immediate concern, asking if she is finally feeling better. Lucia cheerfully confirms that she is doing much better now that she has managed to get a bit of rest, while Paula watches their interaction from a distance. Lucia mentions that she should head back to change her clothes, prompting Alfonso to happily offer to walk her to the door. Alfonso turns his attention back to Paula and calls her name, causing the student representative to quickly answer him. Alfonso sternly warns Paula that even though she is acting as the host today, she must absolutely not interfere with his plans. He demands to know if she understands his command before turning to lead Lucia away, telling her that it is time for them to go. Lucia compliantly agrees, leaving Paula standing entirely alone in grim silence. Staring at their retreating figures as they exit through the large palace doors, Paula reflects that she already had a strong hunch this would happen. She watches them leave, deeply unsettled by the fact that everything is unfolding on this exact day. Paula anxiously wonders if things will truly be that easy, noting that they are going up against Lady Alexandra. As the organizer, she sincerely wishes for the event to proceed without any issues, but she sighs as she realizes that will likely not be the case. Looking down with a deeply troubled expression, she feels completely certain that major disruptions are on the horizon. A tense silence settles over Crown Prince Alfonso, Lady Alexandra, and Lucia as the uncertainty of what will happen next hangs heavily in the air. With the brewing conflict between them drawing closer to a critical peak, there is now only 1.5 hours left. Outside the towering stone spires of the grand mansion, a crisp knocking sound rattles against the door. Zenith steps inside, politely announcing that she is there to help her mistress get ready for the gathering. However, as the maid steps fully into the room, she stops dead in her tracks, her face freezing in absolute shock at what she sees. Catching sight of her maid, Alexandra turns around and remarks that her arrival is excellent timing. She stands before a backdrop of blooming white roses, already dressed in a highly elaborate, deeply low-cut dark gown adorned with large fabric roses. Alexandra requests her assistance in fastening the buttons along the back of the dress. Zenith stares back with a completely flat, deadpan expression, asking her mistress directly if she truly intends to wear that specific dress to the gathering. Alexandra merely blinks in response, offering a simple, questioning confirmation. Zenith fiercely protests, declaring that she will absolutely not allow her mistress to go out looking so wicked. Alexandra snaps back in frustration, arguing that the dress looks incredibly cool and admitting that it is the exact outfit she wore in the original game, which only prompts Zenith to shout that she has just proven her point. Refusing to back down, the determined maid holds up an entirely different gown and loudly demands that her lady leave the styling choices to her just this once. Alexandra groans in deep disappointment, as she childishly whines that she does not want to change after already taking the time to put the dress on. Zenith remains completely unmoved by the complaint, commanding her mistress to take the outfit off immediately. Realizing she has lost the battle, a defeated Alexandra reluctantly mutters that she understands and will comply. Zenith softly notes that her lady is already naturally beautiful and has absolutely no need to over-decorate herself. With a final, deft movement, the maid finishes her work and happily presents her mistress with the completed look. Alexandra quietly gazes downward before fully taking in her new reflection. She stands adorned in a magnificent, high-collared dark gown that fits her perfectly, her long hair draped over her shoulders. Zenith stands nearby, softly requesting her mistress to take a proper look at her transformation in the mirror. As Alexandra sits quietly at her vanity table, Zenith meticulously puts the finishing touches on her hair and asks how she likes the final result. Alexandra stares at her reflection, nervously stammering that she does not quite know what to say because she is genuinely surprised by how she looks. Admiring the elegant, full-length silhouette of her new gown, Alexandra softly marvels that she never realized she could look so incredibly graceful. Zenaida warmly observes that the deep blue color perfectly suits the current young lady. Alexandra can only look away with a slight sweat drop, silently wondering about her maid's meaningful choice of words. She tries to argue that she felt relaxed wearing the red dress, but Zenaida plainly shuts her down with a flat refusal. Zenaida questions why her mistress always chooses red clothes in the first place. Alexandra confidently answers that she does it because it stands out and serves as an excellent way to show off her presence. Zenaida bluntly points out that it was exactly this arrogance that made Prince Alfonso dislike her. The harsh truth hits Alexandra like a physical blow, forcing her to admit that the comment is right on the mark even as she resolves to proceed. Alexandra wonders if the blue gown truly suits her since it is not what she originally had in mind. Zenaida reassures her that it is the best styling work she has ever done and promises that her mistress will be surprised by the result. She continues to grumble to herself as she walks down the grand hallway, remaining highly skeptical about whether the new look is a good choice. Viviana stands at the bottom of the grand staircase and looks up in utter astonishment as Alexandra makes her way down. Processing her sister's sudden transformation, Viviana can only softly call out to her in disbelief. Noticing her sister's intense staring, Alexandra leans over with a playful smile and asks if there is something on her face. Viviana quickly turns away in a flustered panic, loudly insisting that nothing is wrong at all. Our girl calmly notes that today is the final gathering with the graduates and suggests that her sister will surely miss them. Viviana proudly places her hands on her hips and taunts her back, scoffing that it is simply a pity that the seniors who are far more splendid than her older sister are leaving. Intense sparks of hostility crackle between the two sisters as they glare at each other. Alexandra then shifts her tone and looks toward Viviana, asking if she has finally sorted out her thoughts. Viviana looks downcast as she hesitatingly admits that she still does not believe her older sister is in the right. Alexandra listens to her sister's quiet protest in silence. Viviana clenches her dress tightly as she reflects on the past, remembering how close she was to Lucia and witnessing firsthand how many tears she shed due to Alexandra's actions. Deeply upset, Viviana declares that she cannot forgive what her older sister did and demands that Alexandra apologize to her, though a lingering doubt still weighs heavily on her mind. Standing on the grand staircase, Viviana explains that she carefully compared her older sister's past actions and Lucia's behavior separately. This analytical approach leaves Alexandra staring back at her in wide-eyed, silent surprise. Viviana recalls her deep contemplation from the previous day, realizing that Lucia might truly be an irregular presence in their world. She notes that while everyone naturally loves Lucia, the girl never chooses a specific favorite, causing the surrounding young noblemen to constantly protect her instead. The sister visualizes Lucia being surrounded by admiring suitors, noting that it looks as though the noblemen are completely worshipping her. Viviana grows increasingly anxious, reasoning that while such behavior might be acceptable within the small confines of the academy, it will inevitably cause everything to come crashing down on them in the future. Terrified of the looming consequences, Viviana passionately declares that she refuses to cross such a dangerous bridge alongside Lucia. Alexandra remains perfectly still, listening intently to her younger sister's outburst. Alexandra gently smiles and expresses her genuine relief that they had this intense argument. Looking down at her stunned younger sister, Alexandra softly notes that she is truly glad Viviana has finally opened her eyes to the reality of the situation. Turning slightly with a fond, knowing smile, Alexandra directly reminds the younger girl that she is, after all, her cherished sister. This sudden declaration leaves a completely startled Viviana staring back in silence. Breaking the heavy silence, Alexandra cheerfully warns that they will both be incredibly late if they do not get moving right away, bidding her sister farewell until they reach the gathering venue. As Alexandra walks away, Viviana stands entirely alone in the quiet corridor, staring down in silent thought. Upon Alexandra's arrival at the venue, Cecilio, with a group of waiting noble companions, gasps in absolute, wide-eyed astonishment at the unexpected sight before them. The gathered friends quickly shower Alexandra with enthusiastic compliments, eagerly praising her stunning new appearance and admitting they barely recognized her at first. While the acquaintances gleefully gush over how incredibly beautiful and cute her older sister looks, a completely speechless Alexandra can only stand there in silent bewilderment. She marvels at the exceptional styling work, wondering if Zenaida was the one who personally put it together and declaring it absolutely amazing. The maid bows her head slightly in response, politely thanking her mistress for the high praise. Shifting her attention, Alexandra turns to Cecilio and addresses him as her brother, noting that she previously asked him to be her partner and asking if he has already changed his clothes. Her brother is caught off guard and stammers in response, while an overhead view reveals another person arriving to urgently call out to the young lady. An unexpected voice suddenly announces from off-screen that they have arrived to pick her up. This sudden declaration leaves Alexandra staring blankly as question marks pop up around her head, frantically trying to comprehend what he means. She panics internally as heavy footsteps echo loudly down the corridor, reasoning to herself that Prince Alfonso should not be coming today and desperately trying to figure out who on earth could be approaching them. Prince Gerald suddenly makes a grand entrance, dressed in a magnificent, formal royal military uniform. Smiling with confidence, he asks Alexandra if he kept her waiting, leaving the young lady to gasp in wide-eyed shock at his sudden appearance. Alexandra completely loses her composure and lets out a frantic scream of disbelief, loudly demanding to know why he is there. Gerald gently assures her that he will explain everything later, calmly stating that it is now time to go. He extends his open hand directly toward a blushing Alexandra, requesting her to give him her hand. Alexandra completely spirals into an internal panic, her mind screaming in utter confusion about what is happening as Prince Gerald smoothly takes her hand and guides her straight toward a grand horse-drawn carriage while Zenaida watches them depart. With only 30 minutes remaining until the official gathering begins, the luxurious carriage clatters quickly through the cobblestone city streets. Prince Gerald's previous, determined vow to return and get her rings vividly through the air as the deadline looms. Sitting quietly side by side inside the moving carriage, a shell-shocked Alexandra looks down in stunned silence. She finally processes the sudden turn of events, silently realizing that this dramatic rescue was exactly what the young prince meant by his earlier warning. She steals a quiet glance at Prince Gerald as the carriage rolls along, feeling a sudden surge of nervousness that makes her heart thump rapidly. The young prince merely turns his head to look back at her with a gentle smile. Our girl panics internally over the prince's sudden transformation, desperately wondering what happened to his usual persona as a sweet younger brother. Her frantic thoughts snap back to reality when Gerald addresses her by name, prompting her to give a startled response. As the carriage travels past the city buildings, Prince Gerald casually asks how he looks. A completely bewildered Alexandra tries to clarify his meaning, leading the prince to confidently explain that he dressed this way simply because she wanted to see a more princely version of him. Leaning in close, Prince Gerald gazes directly into Alexandra's eyes and asks if he is charming enough for her now. Alexandra turns bright red and stammeringly concedes that he does look a bit different. Prince Gerald immediately slides even closer on the carriage seat, intently pressing her to answer if he finally looks truly princely to her. He stares at her fixedly, causing a flustered Alexandra to stammer out that while he certainly looks very princely and completely different now, she still struggles to finish her sentence. Leaning forward with a serious gaze, he commands her to be more specific. The sudden pressure leaves a completely overwhelmed Alexandra recoiling back into her seat. Frustrated by how easily she was being toyed with, Alexandra tells him that is quite enough and mentally reprimands herself to keep her composure. She clears her throat loudly and changes the subject, pointing out that she still has no idea why he came to pick her up since he cannot possibly enter the gathering venue without an official invitation. Prince Gerald holds up a sealed letter and casually tells her not to worry, explaining that he simply requested an invitation for himself. He smiles cheerfully as he reveals that he already knew her brother would not be picking her up because he had already spoken directly with Zenaida and Cecilio, leaving a dark-faced Alexandra to furiously realize that those two were the culprits behind the scheme. Alexandra acknowledges his cleverness, noting that he has gotten much better at handling these situations. Prince Gerald closes his eyes with a confident, proud smile, declaring that he must naturally be able to achieve at least this much if he wishes to prove himself truly worthy of her. Alexandra looks out the window in a brief, heavy silence as she processes the situation. Turning her head slightly, she softly confesses that she never actually understood the reason why the young prince liked her so much. The prince gazes ahead, beginning to recount his oldest memories from the past. He speaks of the days before she became formally engaged to his older brother, recalling the frequent times when the various ducal families would gather at the royal palace to socialize together. He remembers his lonely childhood, reflecting on how he was far too weak and frail to run around with other children his own age. As he sat isolated on a large armchair while the others socialized, there was only one specific young girl who paid any attention to him and truly cared for his well-being. In his fond memory, the two young children would run around wildly until they were completely covered in mud, even climbing up massive trees together despite others shouting for them to get down. Prince Gerald remembers her as an incredibly bright and lively girl who would loudly complain whenever he tripped and fell, but would always immediately stretch out her hand to help him up anyway. Alexandra points her finger suddenly, asking with great surprise if he was actually the little boy from the past who used to cry all the time. Prince Gerald looks back at her with a soft, slightly blushing smile, wondering if she finally remembers their childhood connection now. She processes the shocking truth that the little brat from her childhood memories was the prince himself. Prince Gerald laughs gently at her reaction, explaining that her carefree actions back then marked the very first time someone treated him simply as a normal boy rather than treating him like royalty. He remembers how incredibly happy that genuine interaction made him feel inside. He recalls the exact moment he realized he had fallen deeply in love with her. He remembers his profound shock and sadness when she was later formally introduced to everyone as his older brother's new fiancée. Leaning his head back against the carriage wall, Prince Gerald confesses how deeply frustrated he felt during those years. He admits he was incredibly jealous of his older brother and constantly tried to compete with him, suffering because no matter how hard he tried, Alexandra always remained completely out of his reach. He explains that when he witnessed Alexandra and his older brother supporting each other so closely back then, he simply could not bring himself to say anything to disrupt them. He confesses that he genuinely believed he had managed to give up on his feelings over time, but he ultimately realizes that he simply could not stop loving her. Prince Gerald leans forward and gently kisses the back of Alexandra's hand, softly calling out her name. Alexandra is left staring in complete wide-eyed astonishment. He acknowledges that he might be younger and immature, but he asserts that his feelings for her are second to none. He earnestly requests to remain by her side from now on so he can grow into a man she fully approves of. The prince tenderly places his hand against Alexandra's cheek, looking directly into her eyes as he asks her to be his. He gently lets his fingers slip down through her long, flowing hair while waiting for her response. A deeply flustered Alexandra blushes intensely and stammers nervously as Prince Gerald leans in closer. Their faces draw incredibly near, almost touching, leaving her to weakly plead with him to wait a moment. Suddenly breaking the tension, Alexandra pushes Prince Gerald back, loudly telling him to wait a single minute. He winces and rubs his head in slight pain from her sudden reaction, while a highly embarrassed Alexandra fiercely scolds him to think carefully about the timing of his actions. He wonders if his advances are merely unacceptable in this specific location, but an irritated Alexandra snaps back that he completely misses the point, firmly reminding him that she is about to fight for her very life at the upcoming venue. Prince Gerald sheepishly admits she is right and apologizes for getting ahead of himself. He quickly slumps over in deep embarrassment, burying his face in his hands as he laments how childish he just acted, while an exasperated Alexandra sits silently with her arms crossed. Softening her expression, Alexandra tells him that he truly behaved like a prince just a moment ago. Prince Gerald is left blinking in absolute surprise at her sudden praise. With a bright blush still on her face, Alexandra strictly warns him that she will only say this once. Before she can finish, a crisp knocking sound suddenly rattles the carriage door as an outside voice politely asks to be excused. They have arrived at the academy venue. Alexandra remains silent, turning to look toward the window as a hand pulls back the curtain. Outside the carriage windows, crowds of elegantly dressed nobles gather and chat near the academy steps. Inside the vehicle, Prince Gerald turns toward Alexandra with a concerned expression, asking if she is doing all right. Alexandra looks away toward the window while gently holding the curtain back with her gloved hand. She calmly responds to the young prince, offering a soft apology but stating that she does not quite know who he is talking to. She internally reflects on her journey, remembering the moment she first recalled her tragic destiny and how she initially believed everything was over. However, she recognizes with deep resolve that she has successfully managed to come this far against all odds. Looking down with elegant composure, Alexandra calmly tells Gerald that it is now time for them to make their move. Displaying a confident smile, Alexandra asks him for a firm commitment, wondering if he will faithfully escort her all the way until the very end. Prince Gerald is initially taken aback by her serious request, but his expression quickly softens into a gentle smile. He firmly takes Alexandra's hand, passionately declaring that he will absolutely accompany her as a matter of course. Stepping out in front of the towering, Grand Academy building, Prince Gerald confidently tells Alexandra that it is time to go. Side by side, the pair begin walking toward the main entrance doors under the gaze of the surrounding crowd, while a stark announcement notes that exactly 0 hours remain before the gathering begins. Prince Gerald and Alexandra walk hand in hand into the gathering, stepping past beautiful blooming roses. The surrounding noble guests look on in utter shock, their murmurs filling the room as they watch the unexpected pair arrive together. Whispers ripple through the crowd as a guest wonders if that is Prince Gerald entering the room. Alexandra silently observes the reaction, reflecting on how everyone already knew she would not be arriving with Prince Alfonso today. Alexandra internally realizes that his sudden appearance by her side must have been highly surprising to the entire crowd. As they make their way into the room, a noblewoman steps forward to greet Lady Alexandra warmly. Alexandra immediately recognizes her, politely addressing the woman as Lady Carolina. Lady Carolina greets the prince politely, noting that it has been a long time and observing how much more mature he looks now. This sudden compliment causes a flustered Prince Gerald to blush and offer his thanks, while Alexandra watches the interaction with a slight blush of her own. Carolina leans in close to Alexandra to quietly bring up the favor that Alexandra had previously requested of her. She flashes a playful wink, causing Alexandra to open her eyes wide in quiet surprise. Holding Alexandra's hands firmly, she reassures her that she also deeply cares for the integrity of their country. She finishes by warmly wishing Alexandra the absolute best of luck in what lies ahead. She maintains a reassuring, gentle smile to offer comfort to her friend. Alexandra lets out a soft smile, reassuring her to leave everything entirely to her. She suddenly notices a wave of murmurs rippling through the crowded room. She turns her head in response, her eyes widening in surprise as she senses an immediate shift in the ballroom atmosphere. Crown Prince Alfonso strides elegantly into the center of the hall while holding hands with a softly smiling Lucia. Their grand, unified entrance immediately draws heavy whispers and intense stares from the surrounding noble guests. Alexandra listens silently as the nearby guests whisper among themselves about how she arrived with Prince Gerald while Crown Prince Alfonso is accompanied by Lady Lucia. The onlookers anxiously wonder what could have happened, noting that the scandalous rumors were entirely true. As the two pairs cross paths in the crowded ballroom, Lucia catches sight of Alexandra and swallows hard in a sudden wave of nervous anxiety. Sensing her gaze, Alexandra looks back and glares directly at her with a silent expression. Sensing the immense friction between the groups, Prince Gerald immediately steps forward to shield Alexandra. At the exact same moment, Crown Prince Alfonso stops in his tracks and turns around, his expression shifting into absolute shock as his eyes lock onto his younger brother. Alfonso looks on with a furious expression, and demands to know why his younger brother is present at the venue. Prince Gerald stares ahead with a firm expression, while Alexandra reassures Gerald that he has no need to worry about the situation, quietly stating that she is perfectly fine and telling him that it is time for them to go. Walking ahead through the grand hall, our girl internally reflects on the unfolding events. She notes that Prince Alfonso arrived alongside the potato girl exactly like the original game scenario, concluding that it is nothing to be surprised about as she prepares for what comes next according to the game. A grand announcement echoes across the ballroom to signal the official arrival of the king and queen. The gathered ladies and gentlemen quickly turn their attention toward the upper royal balcony as polite applause breaks out across the entire venue. Paula steps forward to deliver the opening speech in her role as the student representative. Looking out over the ballroom, she requests everyone's full attention as she formally announces the beginning of the banquet and begins her address to all of the graduates. As the banquet continues, the narration notes that the event will soon move on to the next segment after the current speech concludes. Paula calls out the name of Prince Alfonso. With the graduate representative's speech coming, Paula politely guides the way forward for Alfonso. Alexandra watches silently, fully aware that the critical moment has arrived. Standing before the entire crowd of nobles, Prince Alfonso takes his place at the front of the room. During his address, Prince Alfonso initially takes the opportunity to express his gratitude to all the graduates and the teachers who provided great help during their time there. However, the narration notes that he abruptly cuts his speech short to focus on something entirely different. Alfonso projects his voice across the room, announcing his intention to use this specific opportunity to talk about another matter. Listening from the crowd, Alexandra remains perfectly composed as she braces herself for his next words. Prince Alfonso firmly commands Lucia to come to his side, prompting a startled reaction from the young girl as he pulls her close. Turning back to the crowd, the prince loudly shouts Alexandra's name and fiercely declares that he will bring all of her sins to light, signaling that the confrontation has finally begun. Furious and completely out of patience, Alfonso yells that he will no longer tolerate these repeated wrongdoings. In his authority as the crown prince, his voice echoes through the silent room as he points directly at his target. He loudly proclaims that he officially renounces his engagement. The shocking declaration leaves the entire room at a complete standstill. With tears in her eyes, Lucia pleads directly with Alexandra to finally admit to her crimes. She desperately adds that if Alexandra confesses right now, Lord Alfonso might still find it in his heart to forgive her. Prince Gerald grumbles in frustration toward his older brother, but Alexandra calmly raises her hand and requests that he stay silent for now. Taking a firm and elegant step forward, she prepares to face this final flag of destruction head-on. Standing on the grand ballroom stage, Alexandra acts completely oblivious to the sudden accusations. She calmly wonders aloud what exactly Prince Alfonso means by his claims of wrongdoings. Internally, she resolves to completely crush the prince's public attempt to humiliate her. Infuriated by her calm attitude, Alfonso fiercely warns Alexandra not to play dumb with him. He aggressively thrusts a written document forward, shouting that he knows everything she did to a worried Lucia over the past year. Alexandra coolly states that she has absolutely no memory of the actions he is describing and politely requests him to read the document aloud. Alfonso lets out a confident scoff and readily agrees to her demand. He begins reading from the paper, loudly accusing Alexandra of hurling countless insults at Lucia when she first arrived at the academy. Alexandra remains perfectly relaxed and counters that she was merely offering advice because Lucia's behavior was rather problematic. Addressing the crowd, Alexandra points out that even though the academy follows a rule of equality regardless of social status, a basic modicum of proper etiquette is still expected from every student. Alfonso angrily cuts her off and shouts that her actions did not stop there. He fiercely accuses Alexandra of deliberately taking away all of Lucia's friends and intentionally isolating her from the rest of the students. Alexandra brings up the traditional academy tea parties where upperclassmen invite freshmen to socialize. She notes that the entire purpose is simply to help students get to know one another, finding no fault in the custom. She explains that it was a pure coincidence that one of the freshmen she invited happened to be a friend of Lucia's. She maintains that many other nobles have done the exact same thing, as Lady Carolina and the surrounding guests listen carefully. Alfonso furiously bellows that Alexandra must have coerced the other students into isolating her. Our girl smoothly denies the claim, countering that if nobody else invited Lucia, it simply proves that the student body did not approve of her behavior, leaving a startled Lucia completely speechless. Alfonso aggressively presses the issue, asking if Alexandra is claiming it was not her fault that Lucia's belongings were damaged. She calmly clarifies that it was truly not her intention. Alexandra freely admits that she has complained about Lucia's activities during private conversations with her friends, but she firmly states that she never once asked anyone to act on those complaints. In the background, Lady Carolina nods her head in silent verification. She reveals that whenever any damage was done to Lucia's clothes or books, she personally reached out to procure proper replacement. Our girl explains that fulfilling such responsibilities is simply the duty of anyone born into a noble ducal family. Flashing a sharp, knowing smirk, Alexandra directly asks Lucia if her personal donations were simply not to her liking. This unexpected question strikes Lucia with absolute terror, leaving her at a loss for words. Enraged by her composure, Alfonso points an accusing finger and yells that she refuses to acknowledge her guilt no matter what. Alexandra calmly counters from across the room, simply stating that she never said any such thing. Turning her attention fully toward her opponent, Alexandra clasps her hands elegantly and addresses Miss Lucia with a calm, formal apology. The unexpected apology sends a massive shockwave through the entire ballroom, causing the guests to whisper that it is now difficult to determine who is truly at fault based on the conversation. Trembling in disbelief, a sweating Lucia can only look on and weakly mutter that Alexandra is lying. Our girl silently observes Lucia's pale face, noting to herself that it is completely natural for the girl to be so shaken. She reflects that in the original game scenario, her character as the villainess was never supposed to apologize. Watching Lucia spiral into a state of panic, she inwardly wonders what the girl will do next. She challenges Lucia internally, questioning if she can only follow a pre-written scenario and if she can possibly keep up with this completely unscripted behavior. Desperate to regain control, Alfonso loudly barks that the property damage is still not her greatest crime. Holding a panicked Lucia close, he fiercely points at Alexandra and bellows the shocking accusation that she hired thugs to assault Lucia. She surprisingly confesses that attacking nobles was the only wrongdoing she committed, stating that she will not run away from her grave crime even if it ended as a failed attempt. She openly admits that her actions were driven entirely by jealousy, leaving a bewildered Alfonso and Lucia completely stunned. Resolving to be completely honest and open about her past actions, Alexandra calmly explains that her intense jealousy drove her to want to defile Miss Lucia. Alfonso reacts with disgust, shouting that she tried to scar Lucia for life based on nothing but such selfish feelings. A terrifying glare washes over Alexandra's face as she directly demands to know if Alfonso just called her selfish. Her intense aura forces both the prince and a sweating Lucia to swallow hard in pure fear. Clenching her fist tightly, Alexandra fiercely asks what they think brought this entire situation to its current state. She targets Alfonso directly, pointing out that it all happened because he chose to make light of his own fiancée. She notes that the prince constantly chooses to give his favor to Lucia instead. Letting her absolute rage erupt, Alexandra shouts that if the prince had not behaved in such a disgraceful manner, she would never have been engulfed by jealousy in the first place. A heavy, dead silence instantly settles over the entire ballroom as the noble guests process her explosive words. Breaking the quiet tension, Alexandra softly murmurs that while it might not be completely relevant to the current discussion, there is something else to address. She reminds the crowd of a past warning she personally gave to Lucia when she first arrived at the academy, specifically telling her that she must not fraternize with engaged gentlemen. Alexandra asks Lucia directly if she remembers that interaction, leaving the stammering girl completely flustered. Glaring deeply at her opponent, Alexandra coldly asks to be reminded exactly who it was that ignored those warnings and chose to make continual passes at various gentlemen. A terrified Lucia breaks out into a cold sweat of pure panic before Alfonso shouts for silence. He angrily barks that even if Lucia has her faults, it still does not absolve Alexandra of her crimes. Alexandra calmly sighs, reminding him that she already admitted to acting out of jealousy, before flashing a sharp smile and noting how fortunate it is that her actions were merely a failed attempt. Alfonso fiercely screams Alexandra's name in pure rage. From across the room, Alexandra smoothly addresses him as Your Highness and directly asks what he wants from her, leaving the prince completely taken aback and sweating in confusion. She reminds him that as the crown prince, he knows perfectly well that he is expected to have children with his official fiancée, while he demands that she befriend Miss Lucia. Our girl presses further, asking if he expected her to simply tolerate his affair with another woman. She asks if he truly expected her to be that merciful. Her cutting question leaves Alfonso and Lucia completely speechless and stumbling for an answer. Alexandra points out that he should have confronted her the exact moment he realized he was in love with Lucia to state that he wanted to call off the engagement. Alfonso angrily shouts back, asking how he could have possibly done such a thing. Alexandra glares back coldly, questioning why he did not simply change his fiancée to someone else instead. She argues that he could have easily done so if he truly wanted to, but instead chose to do nothing while continually exposing Miss Lucia to her hatred. Unable to take any more, Alfonso loses his temper entirely and screams for her to stop. Trembling with absolute rage, he declares that he has heard quite enough of her nonsense. He loudly states that people like Alexandra do not belong in this place, while Alexandra looks on completely unbothered. Alfonso points an accusing finger across the wide ballroom and commands Alexandra to get out of the venue immediately. Turning her attention away from the prince, Alexandra addresses Paula by name and calmly asks if she is forbidden from remaining at the event. Looking on with a troubled expression, Paula quietly responds that it is not the case. Paula calmly addresses the crowd, explaining that as a graduate, Alexandra is a guest of honor at the venue and should enjoy the rest of her stay. Watching the interaction unfold, an irritated Alfonso wonders internally what Paula is doing. She states that while Alexandra's past behavior was indeed unacceptable, she has already delivered an apology. Paula adds that any unofficial punishment would ultimately become a private matter. Gritting his teeth in a fit of mounting fury, a sweating Alfonso reacts with intense irritation to her words. Losing his composure entirely, Alfonso aggressively extends his hand and loudly proclaims that as the crown prince, he commands her to leave the venue immediately. Alexandra reflects silently on the hypocrisy of the situation, noting that the prince was previously furious with her for using her noble power against Lucia. She observes that he is now doing the exact same thing to her without even realizing it. She reflects inwardly that his royal commands no longer have any power over her. Looking back toward the couple, Alexandra calmly mentions that there is something she forgot to tell him. With a relaxed and highly confident posture, our girl smoothly announces that she has already received explicit permission from His Majesty the King to officially end their engagement. The sudden revelation leaves a sweating Alfonso and a pale Lucia completely frozen in disbelief. He breaks into a burst of amused laughter at the absurdity of the situation. Alfonso completely misinterprets the news and joyfully turns to a deeply confused Lucia, enthusiastically calling out her name while the girl anxiously wonders what is happening. Alfonso beams brightly and declares that he can finally marry her now. He confidently assures her that his father the king will certainly understand how wonderful of a person she truly is, while a horrified Lucia breaks out into a cold sweat of absolute terror. As a flustered Lucia tries to stammer a weak response to the prince's ecstatic embrace, Alexandra smoothly steps forward to interrupt them. Flashing a sharp, mocking smirk, she states that she is sorry to rain on his parade but clarifies that the king's decree actually meant she is still destined to be the next queen. The terrifying clarification strikes Alfonso and Lucia with absolute dread, leaving them staring wide-eyed in sheer panic. Gasping for air, the frantic prince turns pale as he demands to know what she is saying and how such a development could even be possible. Alfonso looks up toward the upper balcony in a sudden state of total panic and desperately shouts out for his father. The prince loudly demands to know why such a thing was permitted, shouting that there must have been some kind of mistake. Looking up at the royal couple seated on their balcony thrones, a sweating crown Prince Alfonso weakly registers his disbelief. He frantically waves his arms as he asks why his parents are doing this, loudly shouting that someone who oppresses the weak should never be allowed to become the next queen. The queen delivers a biting response from the balcony above, coldly stating that Alexandra was chosen simply because she is several times smarter than her son. The queen sternly continues her lesson, warning that if a ruler acts only on emotions as the prince does, the country will soon fall. She notes that the ability to put one's position before personal feelings and the willingness to be cunning are necessary traits for those bearing national responsibilities. This cold reality leaves Alfonso sweating in a desperate panic while a terrified Lucia trembles in absolute dread. Alfonso desperately appeals to the balcony, asking what is wrong with wanting to take the person he loves as his wife. In response, the king calmly closes his eyes and states that he understands his son's feelings, formally announcing that he will allow the engagement between the prince and Lucia. The king immediately adds a heavy condition to his approval, declaring that the prince must lead the crusade next spring to reclaim the lands occupied by the barbarians. Hearing this severe command, Alfonso gasps in absolute horror. A map reveals a territory located to the east that was taken by barbarians a long time ago. The narration explains that it remains the ultimate desire and goal of the nation to bring that specific land back under their official control. A violent battlefield appears where knights clash fiercely with spears and shields amidst splatters of blood. The narration highlights that while leading the crusade is considered a great honor, it is also a certain death sentence, noting that failing the crown prince's route in the original game results in him being sent on this fatal campaign. The grim reality of the game reveals that for the heroine, this path ultimately means that the prince dies. Standing on the ballroom floor, a shadowed Lucia trembles violently in pure panic as a completely oblivious Alfonso calls out her name. Alfonso happily grabs Lucia by the shoulders, enthusiastically proclaiming that they will win the war so he can return and marry her. However, an utterly terrified and sweating Lucia desperately panics that he cannot win because it is far too dangerous. He smiles confidently with a visible blush, reassuringly telling Lucia not to worry since their army has already won multiple times. He confidently declares that the barbarians will not hold a candle to them. Alfonso happily suggests that Lucia should come with him on the crusade to encourage him, adding that everyone will think highly of her if she goes. However, a terrified Lucia panics internally and repeats her refusal, causing a confused Alfonso to question her reaction. Suddenly losing her composure, Lucia violently shoves Alfonso away from her, fiercely screaming her refusal as he recoils from her sudden physical outburst. Crying and trembling with intense fear, Lucia labels the idea of going on a crusade completely stupid. She loudly screams at the prince that if he wants to go so badly, he should just go by himself. A stunned silence falls over the entire ballroom as guests, along with Prince Gerald, Alexandra, and Paula, witness the sudden outburst. Alfonso stands completely bewildered and calls out Lucia's name, while a sweating and flustered Lucia suddenly realizes what she just did, as Alexandra watches her with a silent expression. Desperate to fix her mistake, Lucia frantically waves her hands and apologizes, claiming she was just surprised and would be nothing but a hindrance on the battlefield. She hurriedly adds that she will instead pray for his victory from the capital, but an ominous declaration from above states that she will not be staying in the capital. Looking down from her balcony seat, the queen addresses Lucia directly, calmly revealing that she already spoke with Lucia's parents before coming to the venue today. This sudden announcement leaves a startled Lucia looking up in complete confusion. The queen explains that the royal family has determined Lucia's habit of deceiving countless gentlemen to be a serious threat to the realm. She notes that they would have reconsidered if Lucia's love was strong enough to accompany the prince, but since that is not the case, Lucia is formally sentenced to be sent away to a monastery, leaving the young girl completely wide-eyed with horror. Raising her hand with a cold wave, the queen remarks that it is unfortunate but notes that it was Lucia's final chance. As royal guards suddenly surround a panicked Lucia, the queen sternly commands them to take her away. The guards firmly grab a weeping Lucia and drag her across the floor as she desperately protests that she did not do anything and pleads that this is not right. Alfonso fiercely tries to break free to rescue her, loudly screaming for the guards to stop and let her go, while Lucia wails his name in absolute terror as she is forced out of the room. Lucia weeps hysterically as she is forcibly dragged away by the royal guards. She violently thrashes about while shouting that this situation is completely wrong and that it should not be her because she is the heroine after all. Alexandra looks down with a cold and indifferent expression while Lucia continues to wail in the background. As the guards pull her out of the hall, Lucia screams in absolute denial, declaring that the situation makes no sense and that the villainess was the one supposed to end up ruined like this. With Lucia finally removed from the room, a completely devastated Alfonso collapses heavily to his knees on the ballroom floor. Alfonso begins to chuckle darkly to himself in his broken state. Hearing his strange reaction, Alexandra lets out a booming, unbridled laugh that echoes loudly across the wide ballroom floor. Flashing a mocking smile, Alexandra directly asks Alfonso if this miserable outcome represents his so-called true love. She adds that she fully expected the two of them to courageously face whatever fate had in store together, prompting the disgruntled prince to bitterly tell her to shut up. She reflects to herself that if the roles were reversed, she would have been fully prepared to endure absolute hell alongside her beloved. Alfonso commands her to shut up once more. Alexandra smiles serenely and mockingly bids farewell to Prince Alfonso, offering her insincere thanks for everything he has done. Her calm departure instantly triggers another explosive scream of pure rage from the broken prince. Completely losing his mind, a furious Alfonso lunges forward and throws a violent punch directly at Prince Gerald, who moves to shield Alexandra. Standing over the ruined banquet tables and spilled drinks, a hostile Alfonso glares down with intense malice. He spits out a harsh insult, calling his former fiancée a witch. Refusing to let the assault slide, a fierce Prince Gerald quickly lunges back onto his feet. With an expression of pure rage, he drives his fist straight back into Prince Alfonso's face to retaliate for the unprovoked attack. Standing firmly over the fallen prince, Gerald fiercely defends Alexandra, loudly declaring to his older brother that she is absolutely no witch. Gerald bellows at Alfonso that Alexandra is his wife, leaving the defeated crown prince staring back at him in complete, wide-eyed shock. Clutching his bruised face on the floor, a humiliated Alfonso bitterly curses his current state. Straining to push himself back up, he glares at the couple and furiously vows that when he returns victorious from his upcoming crusade, he will completely destroy them. Alfonso lets out an irritated huff and storms away from the scene. As his heavy footsteps echo through the tense room, a sudden realization that instantly catches the attention of Prince Gerald. Kneeling down right beside her on the floor, a deeply concerned Gerald anxiously asks Alexandra if she is hurt, expressing his sincere regret that he failed to fully shield her from the attack. Holding her hand, Alexandra quietly looks away and softly assures him that she is perfectly fine. Watching his older brother depart, she notes that Alfonso is merely acting like a sore loser. Alexandra quietly responds that this public humiliation is exactly what the prince deserves. Quiet tears begin to fall and splash against the ballroom floor. While the surrounding crowd whispers and a worried prince reaches out to comfort her by name, Alexandra lets out a pained groan as she internally reflects on the harsh reality that she is, after all, a villainess. As her tears continue to drip steadily onto the polished ground, Alexandra's internal thoughts turn deeply critical of herself. She quietly acknowledges that she does not possess a good personality, but realizes that a much heavier weight is still crushing her spirit. Unable to suppress her overwhelming heartbreak any longer, she completely breaks down. Shaking violently, she weeps over the profound, devastating realization of what it truly feels like to be hated by someone she once genuinely loved. Her fading internal thoughts carry a profound sadness, lamenting that despite her best efforts to stay strong, the painful rejection still hurts her so terribly badly. Several months have passed since the dramatic events at the ballroom, marking the official beginning of the epilogue. Deep inside a quiet stone building, soft and faint whimpers echo through the long hallways and empty arched doorways. In a sparse, sunlit room, Lucia kneels on the floor in absolute misery, quietly weeping to herself and lamenting how much she hates her current situation. Tears stream heavily down Lucia's face as she clasps her hands tightly together in desperate prayer. She begs for an escape from her grim confinement, expressing her intense desire to return home while pleading for Prince Alfonso to come and save her. Wailing in deep despair, Lucia cries out to the empty room, demanding to know why this terrible fate is happening to her. Suddenly, a gentle hand rests on her shoulder as the female companion calmly tells Lucia that it is finally time to give up. The shadowed girl blames herself for the situation, expressing deep regret for not stopping Lucia's reckless actions back then. Defiant through her tears, Lucia refuses to accept responsibility and angrily shifts the blame, insisting that everything is entirely the fault of that villainous woman. Her companion gently counters that even if that were true, escape from the monastery is completely impossible, before asking Lucia if she has heard the latest news regarding the kingdom. The companion delivers a devastating revelation, explaining that Prince Alfonso suffered a crushing defeat during his crusade against the barbarians and has been captured by the enemy. She bluntly adds that because of this failure, the prince will never be coming to rescue them, leaving a shocked Lucia completely frozen. Denying the grim reality, Lucia violently shakes her head side to side and desperately shouts that the prince will definitely find a way to get them out of there. Her companion reminds her that according to the lore of the original game, the prince is destined to die in this campaign. Lucia points out the harsh difference between a fictional game and their current reality. The companion bluntly tells her that she needs to wake up from her delusions. She directly asks if Lucia is still dreaming, leaving the sweating and tearful girl completely broken as she weakly whimpers to know why. Lucia demands to know why her companion is saying such cruel and disheartening things to her. The companion hesitates for a brief moment before revealing her true feelings. She confesses that she is actually incredibly happy to finally be completely alone with Lucia. Horrified by the sudden confession, Lucia fiercely snaps back, demanding to know what her companion thinks she is saying. The companion reminds Lucia that they are supposed to be childhood friends. Lucia tells her to stop saying such horrible things, pointing out that she was the one who followed her to the monastery in the first place. Overwhelmed with absolute revulsion, Lucia violently lunges back and screams that her childhood friend is straight up disgusting. Instead of being hurt by the harsh insult, the childhood friend softly concedes that Lucia might actually be completely right, leaving a sweating Lucia staring back at her in absolute terror. Lucia recoils in shock, demanding to know who the other girl truly is. Amused by the question, the mysterious girl reaches out to touch Lucia's face and notes how strange it is for her to ask that now, reminding Lucia that they already introduced themselves when they first met. The girl asks Lucia if she has completely forgotten their past. A memory surfaces of their very first encounter outside a building, where a cheerful Lucia introduced herself and asked for the other girl's name, prompting the stranger to prepare her response. Smiling brightly as a child while holding hands, the mysterious girl reveals that her name is also Lucia. Lucia's eye opens wide in pure terror as a realization hits her. Looking on with a sharp, dark smile, the other Lucia asks if she finally remembers the truth now. Trembling violently on the floor, a panicked Lucia desperately claims that the girl is lying and demands to know who she is, stammering in horror at the thought that the stranger might actually be herself. The other Lucia points out how Lucia was always too preoccupied with herself to ever think about anything else. Looking up in absolute bewilderment, a sweating Lucia struggles to comprehend how this could even be possible. A memory surfaces of past loneliness and isolation, filled with desperate questions about where they were and why they were always alone. The other Lucia calmly explains that Lucia was never even interested enough to notice what her counterpart looked like. Placing a finger against Lucia's chest, the other girl explains that this space is actually their shared mind and reveals that she was only able to manifest whenever Lucia was asleep. With a serene yet unsettling smile, she then asks Lucia what she thinks happened while she was out wandering in the real world. Terrified and gasping, Lucia weakly insists that the girl must be lying. The other Lucia simply giggles softly in response just as a sudden knocking sound echoes from the door. A voice from outside suddenly announces that it is time for breakfast, prompting the other Lucia to state that she has to leave and commands Lucia to wait there for now. Walking over to the door with a pleasant smile, she exits the room, leaving a completely bewildered Lucia to wonder what she meant by waiting there. Lucia stares ahead with her eyes wide in sheer terror as she realizes her counterpart is leaving. Desperate to stop her escape, Lucia lunges wildly toward the open doorway, screaming for her to wait and stay. She frantically begs her companion to stop as the heavy door begins to shut her inside. Pounding her fists violently against the locked wooden door, a sweating and tearful Lucia frantically screams for someone to open it and let her out. She internally reflects that she has always simply wanted to be herself. Separated by the cold barrier of the doorway, the two girls stand on opposite sides of the threshold. The newly liberated Lucia prepares to walk away into freedom, resolutely declaring to herself that this life belongs to her from now on and that she will never give it up to anyone else ever again. With a calm and serene smile, the victorious counterpart whispers that she loves Lucia, drawing a panicked and weeping cry of absolute denial from the trapped girl. As a loud, agonizing scream echoes from the confinement, the free Lucia happily steps outside the massive glass-domed building, while a narrative note reveals that before her reincarnation, the original soul was just a child who cared deeply about what was directly in front of her. The narration reflects that if only one person in her life truly needed her, her entire existence would find a magnificent purpose. Lost in silent reflection, the girl turns her head as a voice from across the bedroom calls out her name, prompting her to calmly reply that she is right there. As she gracefully adjusts her dark head covering, the narration notes that from the very first day they met, that special person became the only individual she has ever truly loved. An elderly nun steps into the room and kindly apologizes for keeping her waiting, asking if she has already completed her morning prayers. The girl softly confirms that she has, noting internally that her current life has granted her a profound revelation. Lucia expresses her deepest gratitude from the absolute bottom of her soul. She directs her heartfelt thanks to Lady Alexandra, happily declaring that it is entirely because of her actions that Lucia is finally truly happy now. 3 years pass, shifting the scene to a spectacular, towering royal palace where an agonizing scream echoes about how painful the current situation is. Hearing the intense complaints, Zenaida maintains a stern expression, directly stating that no matter what the person says, she simply cannot help them. Alexandra comments to Zenaida that the palace servants are all worked completely to the bone, unlike her. Zenaida casually questions if that is really the case. Regardless of the hard work, today marks an important occasion. Zenaida notes that it is Alexandra's wedding day, Looking slightly worn out by the grand scale of the event, Alexandra wishes that everyone would take things a little bit easier. The passage of time reveals that 3 years have passed since that life-altering day, bringing many changes with it. The historical records detail that Prince Alfonso was captured following a crushing defeat during his military crusade, eventually gaining his release only after giving up vital national secrets. With his royal honor completely destroyed, he now remains confined under strict house arrest inside a secluded fortress for leaking state secrets. His former comrades, Sir Roberto and Sir Balthasar, are still recovering from serious physical injuries sustained in battle. Meanwhile, rumors circulate throughout the kingdom that the former butler, Harold, is now reduced to wandering the streets aimlessly. In another turn of misfortune, Mario's family has completely fallen on hard times after an anonymous individual exposed all of their corrupt dealings, leaving the young man on his knees in despair amid scattered papers. Regarding Elia the assassin, justice was served when he was officially executed for attempting to kill Alexandra as well as for committing numerous other grave crimes. In the aftermath of the chaos, Theodore lost his beloved potato girl and grew completely silent and hollow like a doll. Meanwhile, His Highness Prince Felipe took full responsibility for his past actions and married a now visibly pregnant Lady Letizia. On a lighter note, Isidro managed to publish a highly provocative novel based entirely on a hidden report that Alexandra herself never used. The book is selling incredibly fast across the realm, allowing him to amass an absolute fortune as gold coins rain down around him. Turning back to the present situation, Alexandra lets out a heavy, dramatic sigh. Looking on with curiosity, Zenaida asks her what is wrong, prompting a slightly flustered Alexandra to admit that she still feels incredibly weird about everything that is happening. She looks back calmly, confessing that she honestly never expected Zenaida to end up marrying her brother. A prominent banner identifies Zenaida's own new elevated status as a duchess. Zenaida explains that they kept the news a secret, sharing it only with their parents at the time. Alexandra admits that while she knows she should probably call Zenaida her sister-in-law now, it is a very difficult habit to get used to. Zenaida smiles warmly and reassures her that it is perfectly fine, noting that she still instinctively calls Alexandra young lady herself. Reminding Alexandra of her supreme status, Zenaida points out that she is about to become the next queen and gently mentions that she does not need to be so overly formal. Stepping forward in her majestic wedding dress, Alexandra addresses Zenaida directly to offer her heartfelt gratitude, thanking her sincerely for serving her so faithfully for all this time. Flashing a sharp, highly confident smirk, Alexandra notes that since she is officially leaving the ducal household behind, she wants to know if Zenaida can properly take care of it in her absence. With a graceful smile, Zenaida softly confirms that she absolutely will. Zenaida reassures Alexandra that she can be completely counted on to handle the ducal house. Standing alone in her bridal gown, Alexandra notes to herself that it is almost time for the ceremony to begin, just as a firm knock sounds at the door. She invites the visitor to come in, and a man's polished shoe steps across the threshold as a voice calls out her name. Prince Gerald arrives in a magnificent ceremonial military uniform and asks if she is ready. Alexandra turns to greet him by name, completely taken aback by his stunning appearance. In a brief moment of romantic fluster, Gerald shamelessly declares that she looks much better than he ever imagined, leaving a blushing Alexandra to ask how he can speak so boldly. Gerald simply smiles and responds that it is because she is truly cute. Gerald gently takes Alexandra's hand, confirming that his deep feelings are completely true. Looking into her eyes, he tenderly reveals that he still likes her after all these years, and notes that his devotion has held true no matter what time of day it was or what dangerous battlefield they faced. Alexandra lets out a proud huff as she reflects on the recent history of the realm. Following the devastating defeat of Prince Alfonso, the kingdom launched another military crusade against the barbarians. This new campaign resulted in a magnificent series of victories, symbolized by a majestic flag flying high above a field of spears. The narration reveals that Gerald was the one who personally led the successful crusade into battle. Looking at her husband, Alexandra secretly reflects that she never knew he had so much strength and leadership in him. Moving closer, Gerald tenderly places a hand on Alexandra's cheek and softly murmurs her name. Suddenly, the room's doors burst open with a loud slam as an energetic young boy runs inside with his arms wide open, loudly calling out for his mother. Prince Gerald freezes in place, his face twisting into a shocked expression at the sudden interruption. The young boy leaps forward and hugs his mother tightly, while Alexandra affectionately calls out to her son, Alberto. The queen rushes through the doorway holding a small infant, apologizing profusely to Alexandra and explaining that she only took her eyes off Alberto for a single second before he ran off. Our Lady kindly steps in to reassure the mother-in-law that everything is fine, gently picking up Alberto to lead him out of the room. She explains to Alberto that his mother and father have some very important things to do and asks if he can wait patiently until they are completely finished. Alberto looks up at his parents, asking if they will come back to him soon. She reassures the boy that they absolutely will, and promises that she will come and give him a big hug right after their duties are done. In the distance, the grand bells of the royal palace tower begin to chime loudly to signal the start of the ceremony. Alexandra and Gerald walk gracefully down the long palace corridor as attendants carefully adjust the long trail of her wedding veil. As they prepare to step forward into the grand hall, Gerald quietly calls out her name, prompting Alexandra to turn her head toward him with a gentle response. He leans in closely to seal their marriage vows with a tender kiss. Gerald gazes lovingly at his bride and softly declares that whatever the future holds, he wants the two of them to face it together. He looks up at her with a warm smile and asks Alexandra if she truly feels the same way, causing her to blush deeply beneath her wedding veil. Reflecting silently on her journey, Alexandra notes that their painful past is now entirely behind them as she moves forward into a bright future that was never written in the original game. Flashing her signature sharp, knowing smirk, she confidently accepts Gerald as her husband. With a grand flair, the massive ceremonial doors swing wide open as bright light floods the hallway. Walking hand in hand into the grand venue amidst a shower of floating petals, Alexandra and Gerald step forward together as the completely unprecedented crown princess route officially begins.